Welcome and thank you to be sharing your morning with our February 23rd board meeting. In accordance with Executive Order N-29-20, the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors meetings are being held virtually. You can participate via the Zoom call-in phone number, which is located on your screen and on the front of the agenda. Once you have called in, please press star 9 when an item you want to talk about comes up that you want to make comment on. You'll hear a prompt to press star 6, which will unmute your phone so that you can be heard. So with that, please all join me in a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The flag was even waving in the breeze there. All right, so now we will move on to a little bit of information on if this is your first meeting that you have attended virtually. Just want everyone to know that when you want to call and when you want to make a comment, do press star 9. We already mentioned that, and you'll press star 6 to unmute yourself. And then at that time, you will have 3 minutes to comment. And I'm pretty strict on the 3 minutes. I try to make sure that everyone has the the same amount of time if possible when speaking to the board. So at 2.5 minutes, you will hear this sound. And that tells you it's time to start wrapping up and you have 30 seconds left. And then when that time is up, you will be muted. I can't talk today. So having said that, I'll also try to take a break today for those of us on this call and then those at home who might like a break as well, but I cannot guarantee when that's going to be. I'll certainly try to fit it in somewhere before too late in the morning. So with that, I'm going to go to our CAO and ask if we have any modifications to the agenda.
Good morning, Chair Bass. Yes, we have one modification to the agenda. Supervisor Bass is pulling item C2, and this item will come back at a later date. There are no other modifications to the agenda.
All right, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar with that item?
Motion to approve. Second. Motion.
Okay, all right, so we have a motion and a second. So at this time, we'll go to public comment. I want to mention if people are here to comment on the item that has been pulled, now the time you'd want to speak on it is actually going to be at items not on the agenda. We went through multiple questions on doing this, so just want to remind you that's the next section coming up. All right, so let's see who we've got that would like to make public comment. There's a couple. We've got 7454 is our first speaker, and 4503 is the next. Kent, you're on.
Thank you, Virginia. Item C11, appointment of 2 supervisors to Department of Health and Human Services Child Welfare Services Ad Hoc Committee. And for those of you who know me, I care more about the young people and the old people who can't really defend themselves out here. We do have some problems in the opinion of many, including, I think, the State Attorney General, as far as the young children's welfare not being correctly handled in some ways. And I hope that can be fixed. I hope this ad hoc committee can be someone who can put this together. There have been, letters sent, I think, from the Northern California Tribal regarding these settlement that needs to be done. And so I'm hoping these folks can move forward on that particular one as quickly as we can, because the young people are at risk always, and we don't want even a perception of them being at risk. So we also have a couple other things. We have 13 and 14 under Public Works, which basically are the continued leases out there in the McKinleyville area for the sheriff's substation. And I think they also have a library out there on the same facility. So nice to have that in McKinleyville where you can have some of those services together. I drove by there the other day, by those 2 places, just to see if I could get a COVID test, and I guess it's only on Fridays out at that particular location, and not in either of those structures, but in another place. Some lady there was to tell me about it. There wasn't really any notes detailing that particular function out there. So thank you for the opportunity to speak on those 3 items that are on your consent calendar. Very little else on there today. One of the shortest consents I've seen. Very few amount of items. I think what was the total on that one? There's just 14 items on consent. Sometimes so the public knows there's 40 or 50.
All right. Thank you, Kent. I appreciate that. Our next caller would be 4503, and following that is only identified as call-in user 1. So Ryan, I'll let you figure that out. But 4503, you are unmuted. Are you there? 4503.
Hello.
Hi.
Good morning, board members of the board. I'm actually hoping to comment on section D of the agenda, and I just raised my hand prematurely. Sorry about that.
No worries. All right. Thank you, though. We'll talk to you later. And then we have the last person is call-in user number 1 or -1. So Ryan, I don't know if that person, if you have your hand up and you know that you've had your hand up and you're waiting, unmute, and it looks like you are now unmuted. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and ladies and gentlemen of the board. My name is Vernon Price. I wanted to speak on a non-agendized item, so I, again, also raised my hand prematurely, so I apologize.
All right. Well, no, that's fine. We will be back. I don't see, whoops. Can you hit the right? I'm having technical difficulties. I see no other people wanting to comment, so we'll go back to the board. We do have a motion that's been seconded. And is there comment? Yes, Supervisor Madrone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank the McKinleyville Community Service District for their incredible lease arrangements for our sheriff's substation and for the library. The amount they charge us is just a pittance compared to what it is actually worth. So I just wanted to have a shout out to the Community Service District. They do incredible work, and this is just one more example of how they help the overall community. So thank you.
All right, thank you. And Supervisor Bushnell.
Hi, thank you. I wanted to thank Ben McWhorter for taking on the seat commission for the Aviation Board, Committee, and really appreciate the public's willingness as I figure out my commission seats. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other supervisors for comment? All right, seeing none, Ryan, can you do a roll call vote?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes.
Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bohn?
10-4.
And Supervisor Bass?
Yes.
Thank you. Passes 5-0.
All right, thank you. Now we will move on to the time where we have public comment on non-agenda items. And this is the time for community members to speak with us about something that is not on the agenda, and we will not be able to take action or have conversation about what we hear during this section. It'll have the same 3-minute time rules. So let's see who is first in line. I can almost make a guess. Let's see. No, actually, we have Vernon, I believe, at 4503, or that might be the other person. And next will be calling user number 1, which is Vernon. So 4503, you get to unmute and then speak. There you go. Welcome.
Good morning, members of the board, Madam Chair. My name is Lucinda Jackson. I have a comment I would like to make on agenda item C2 that was pulled from the agenda. It was an appointment of myself to the Human Rights Commission, and I just wanted to read into the record a couple of excerpts from my application to serve on the commission. On the application, you're asked to write a brief statement describing why you're interested in serving. Here's my response. It says, I believe that all people are created equally and that under the United States Constitution, it affirms and secures these rights for all. It is my deep desire to see the Humboldt County meeting the needs of each of its citizens, and I am committed to using my time and abilities to make this desire a reality. I have an education and knowledge base in the areas of business management, business administration, accounting, and law. These, coupled with my experience both in the private sector and the public sector, working with the diverse needs of the community and stakeholders to accomplish shared goals distinguishes me as an applicant. Attached is my resume that highlights some of the areas of my experience and expertise that lend to my making a valuable contribution to the Humboldt County's Human Rights Commission. My packet for my application then goes on to provide a resume which highlights several areas of which I work with vulnerable communities and our community populations within Humboldt County, such as the ADA accessibility barriers and people who are disenfranchised within the community for those reasons, language barriers, working to secure grants and manage those, working to provide leadership and community building and team leadership building within the County of Humboldt. I've served in community investment and volunteer capacities, working with the County of Humboldt as my employer and serving on the Humboldt County Training Task Force as an instructor and a member. I've had the privilege of developing the curriculum and being an instructor for the Team Building Academy, and that was a wonderful experience. I've worked with the Housing and Homeless Coalition. I served on the Point in Time Committee. I work with other community groups, with young people, with people of all ages. I had 4 letters of recommendation that highlighted different skills and abilities, including the ability to serve in a group of people, both as a contributor and a leader, which is a unique ability. I would like to read a couple of excerpts. This is from Davina Smith, who was a co-worker and worked with the County Council's office. I frequently reviewed myself, that would be Lucinda's, written work to members and the public on the CPRA matters, and Ms. Jackson has effective at conveying often difficult messages in a respectful and polite manner. As my point of contact in the department for matters going to the Planning Commission and to the Board of Supervisors.
Linda, I'm sorry. I'm
Is
trying
that
to
the
get
end of my time?
But thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All right. Our next hand that is raised is Vernon. Welcome, Vernon. Vernon, I think you are unmuted.
Yes, ma'am. I do apologize, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, County Council, Madam CAO, ladies and gentlemen of Humboldt County. This is Vernon Price. I filed a grievance back in February of 2020, and I would like to say that we have reached a conclusion or a resolution to this grievance between myself and the party involved, with 2 very robust and healthy conversations. The reason why I'm bringing this to the board today is to use this as a prime example of how we can communicate better with one another to reach a conclusion that is amicable, and communication with one another on the consumer side, along with those that lead our county, builds trust. It builds a community that we all live in. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time and the privilege and the honor to be able to speak this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Vernon. And our next person on the list is 3053. No, I think we got that one already. 7454. That would be you, Ken.
Virginia, yeah, I waited. I wanted to hear what other people had to say this time. Sometimes it's just best to put my listening hat on. So I wanted to agree with Vernon there. That was exceptionally good words. In the process of some of the things I'm doing, I really appreciate working with staff and eliminating problems or trying to address problems rather than hiding behind the thing that somebody might anticipate being in litigation or having complaints filed. And just talk. That's what it takes. I think that's how things are solved. I did try to find the first speaker's resume here on that particular thing that was not available to the public. So I would request that when you have appointments, that your staff report and your roster not be the only thing on there, but if a person makes an application, that the public be able to look at that application. Sounds like an extremely qualified person. Lucinda, you're still listening, you sound like you have all the qualifications to make an excellent CAO of Humboldt County. You might consider a step in that direction at some time. I have a general comment on management, and having been in management for a very long share of my life, first job I think when I was 18 or 19 managing a jewelry store, I learned a long time ago when certain people don't get along, your best thing to do is to separate them and to try and minimize their contact. And a lot of times the way to do that, if you're having a functional business, which the county has a large business, you come up with somebody that's acceptable to those two individuals. And instead of them interacting, you have somebody act as a go-between. And that person needs to have full knowledge. An example would be if you wanted to have somebody to interact with the CAO's office, with the auditor controller's office, you'd find somebody who understood auditing, controlling, the rules, regulation, and have that person probably be in the CAO's office. And then that person would be able to understand the talk and the procedures and the mindset of an auditor controller. So I think that's kind of a common sense business thing that I always found was successful. The other thing I wish to mention was one of the driving forces I've noticed historically here is you have problems with management as soon as someone wants to always make their kingdom bigger and someone else's smaller. So those are a few guiding principles in management. And any time in the past, and I'm not going to mention, we had a planning building director and we had a DHHS person who public perception was making their kingdoms look bigger, and they got too big. And that's what happens when you have not enough diversification, not enough checks and balances. Thank you for my opportunity to speak.
All right, thanks. All right, on the off chance that I don't want to be wrong, if 3053, Ryan, has that person actually been able to make comment under this period? Or
They have not.
Okay, thank you. I started thinking I wanted to check with you. So 3053, welcome. Just press
Good morning, Thomas Mulder here. I just want to clarify you can hear me.
Yep, we can.
All right. Couple of things. Just don't have any notes driving down the road, but I appreciate the county going after another round of social equity funding. I hope they're successful in that. I hope that in the future that there's more ways that money, we can figure out a way in which to tie that money to education or some sort of aspect to better inform our community of better ways to take care of the environmental concerns that many people are concerned about that happen with cannabis cultivation and the war on drugs. It would be nice to focus as we develop as a community, having people that are educated in preserving and trying to take best care of.
Oh, Thomas,
Thomas,
that was a mistake. So you can keep going. I just wanted to let you know.
Okay. Better care of our community for future generations, but not slowing smart development. I believe in very, very smart development, but taking a thoughtful process in that. And we really need to look at people deep down and figure out things that are trying to extract resources. So far, like as the boom and bust that our county has gone through for generations, and try to focus on multifaceted approaches to multiple aspects that help our community prosper. And hopefully we can continue working towards that goal and really, really pay attention to the people that want to be here and want to be here to be a part of the community rather than just extract resources. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Thomas. And I see no other hands up. And so we will resume with, well, you're not, none of the public were up. How's that, Supervisor Wilson? Yeah, Supervisor Wilson. Wait.
Sure. So this is the time when I'm just making sure this is non-agenda, right now. Okay, I just wanted to respectfully request that we close this meeting in the name of, or in the honor of Ron Brunson, from who passed away this last week in Blue Lake. I want to, it's just one of those people when they pass on. There's just a lot of lot of discussion within that community about the memories, about the openness and welcomeness of Ron. I've met Ron a few times myself, mostly at the Grange breakfasts and around town there. I just want to say this is someone who was just an extremely open and wonderful person, and just involved at every level, from just the cleaning up around town, to planting things, to building things, to just being in that space, and just such a part of Blue Lake. And so I know there's discussions in Blue Lake about putting up a bench someplace or a mural. There's just a lot of folks trying to figure out ways to memorialize this person in a way that will honor their contribution in not just the physical space, but really the openness that of that community. So anyways, with that, I would like that we close the meeting in Ron Brunson's honor. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Wilson. I don't see any other supervisors' hands up. So we will move on now to the special presentation, which is our update on COVID-19. Get it every 2 weeks, and welcome Dr. Hoffman and team.
Madam Chair, thank you, supervisors. So a lot to update everyone on this week. Many things going on in the world of COVID, but hopefully some bright spots this time and some good news along the way. For the epidemiology update, it looks like we'll be moving into the red tier, going into the second week of red tier metrics. So we'll be looking for that later today as the state makes their announcement at noon. But case rates have been hovering around 7 per 100,000, and the test positivity rate has been in the 3 to 4% range, which should land us solidly in the red tier for another week, given that we are also meeting the equity metric. We feel this is a much better position than we were in back in January when we moved to the red tier. At that time, we really barely made it into the red tier by 0.1% on the test positivity rate. This time, the numbers look much more solid. The case rates are quite much lower, and the test positivity range is much more solidly in the red tier. So what will this mean going back into the red tier? Just a reminder, so this will be allow for indoor dining at 25% capacity. Indoor gyms can open back up at 10% capacity. Movie theaters at 25% capacity. Indoor retail can go up to 50% capacity. Indoor church and religious services remain at 25% capacity. Bars remain closed in the red tier. Live sports and music are not allowed in the red tier. Office work should continue to be remote unless it's essential. However, that this is still opening us up more broadly. We would still recommend that people continue to do as much outdoors as possible and still try to avoid indoor gathering to reduce the risk of the spread of COVID and to hopefully keep us gaining momentum on lower case rates in the coming weeks and months. In terms of hospital updates, we do continue to have higher rates of hospitalization for COVID patients over the past weeks. Still seeing sort of the tail end of the surge, which can often take 4 to 6 weeks to play out with hospitalizations. So we have to remember that those worst symptoms do come even weeks or even months sometimes after the infection itself. It doesn't appear that we're approaching anything though like crisis in our hospital capacity at this point. So we'll continue to watch the hospital beds and the ICU beds closely for signs of any strain. In terms of transmission, we continue to see the same lines of transmission that we've seen over the past few months, mostly from known household contacts or known contacts outside of your household from a gathering. There does still tend to be some spread from travel and a fair amount of community transmission. But for the most part, the vast majority are still from someone who you know, who's either in your household or who you're gathering with. Statewide and national trends tend to also are trending down currently for both case rates and hospitalization. ICU bed capacity is improving statewide, and it appears that the surge has ended statewide for the hospitals. As far as testing, our testing capacity remains very high, but both locally and statewide, we're seeing the continued trend of decreased testing. So we want to continue to encourage testing, especially as we start to open up more. Schools are talking about opening more. We'll be able to open going into the red tier. Sports, our youth and adult recreational sports will be opening more in these spring and summer months. So really want to encourage people to utilize that testing capacity that's going to allow us to continue to contain the coronavirus and not have an increase in our case rates and spread of COVID that would potentially propel us back into a more restrictive tier again or another surge. So if you think that you have even mild symptoms, it could be a cold or allergies or flu-like symptoms, definitely encourage people to get tested. If you have any sort of exposure that you know of to someone who might have had COVID or have COVID, definitely want to encourage people to continue to quarantine and get tested for that. And if you have any questions about where you could potentially get tested, you can always go to the Humboldt Health Alert website. Lots of information there about testing, or you can call the Joint Information Center at 441-5000 to get information about where you could get tested. Especially important to remember, that as we see variants of concern across California, while we haven't seen any here locally, we do want to continue to test so that if we did have any spread of a variant of concern, we could pick that up quickly here in Humboldt County. Vaccine update. We are hoping to implement some vaccine data on the dashboard this coming week. We've been working closely with our epidemiologists to come up with good data that is presentable and will tell a story to our community. This data comes from the CARE database, the California Immunization Registry. The kinds of data that we have on there will include things like the number of residents vaccinated total and by age groups, as well as by race and ethnicity and zip code, and then those who've received their second doses, so also percentage of the total groups who've received full vaccination with both doses of the vaccine. Some of this data is currently available on the CDPH website, and we hope that our local data will expand that picture of what the local vaccine effort is. Some of you may have heard about some of the delays that happened this week with vaccine clinics. The weather nationwide created inability to deliver vaccine for not just California, but most of the country. So many of our clinics that were supposed to happen late last week or over the weekend had to be postponed. Some of those clinics are starting to get their shipments now, so they should be rescheduling. So if you had an appointment for one of those delayed, if you had an appointment that was delayed because of this shipment, you should be getting contacted by whoever had your appointment to reschedule that this coming week. Almost all of those were second doses, as we are still in a large wave of second doses, which is limiting our ability to give first doses currently. So in terms of who we're vaccinating in Humboldt County, we continue to be open to phase 1A healthcare workers who either didn't receive vaccine in the first round or were waiting. The door is still open, so definitely encourage anyone who's a phase 1A healthcare worker to step forward and get vaccinated now if they didn't do so in the month of January. Phase 1B is open countywide to all residents who are age 70 years or older, as well as anyone who works in a K through 12 education or licensed early childhood education, and that includes both the educators and the support staff in those institutions. And we continue to plan for the next opening of the phases, which would be to include 65 years and older, higher education, as well as food and agriculture. And so we're in the planning stages now for each of those groups and hope to be able to open up to those as the weeks and come in March. Throughout March, we should see many of those groups being able to be opened. We also had information coming down from the state last week about opening up vaccinations to 16 to 64-year-olds with certain medical conditions. So we're working with our local medical providers right now to determine a system by which to identify those individuals and get them in for appointments when that comes available in mid-March. Public Health has been planning larger mass vaccination sites in the coming weeks in preparation for Blue Shield coming in as a third-party administrator. While planning has been in place for a drive-through model, our planning and logistics team determined that the fixed sites that we've been using and where we have existing MOUs and the facilities are set up quite nicely are actually doing a really good job. And so we've decided to continue to stay with that model as and put the drive-through vaccination sites on hold for now. We feel that those can actually have just as much throughput as a drive-through model, so potentially upwards of 1,000 or 1,200 people in a day through those sites. So we're continuing to work towards that and hope that this week we'll have a clinic of over 1,000 people in a day so that we can prepare for hopefully more vaccine in the coming months as more comes down from the federal government. So in terms of who's been vaccinated so far in Humboldt County, based on our estimates, around 14% of Humboldt County residents have received at least one shot of the vaccine. Nearly 60% of those are over the age of 75 with one shot. And based on the zip code analysis, most zip codes are seeing around 10 to 15% of the population in their zip code having received at least one shot. So that's good news. Looks like it's mostly getting out geographically across the county. Public Health, at this time, we're not recommending any changes to behavior after you do get a shot or even after being fully vaccinated. We all need to continue to wear masks. We need to distance and avoid crowds and gatherings, even when fully vaccinated. While there has been an update on quarantine after being fully vaccinated, that is the only change to any of the measures currently in terms of behavior after being fully vaccinated. But as we gather more data, we do hope that we can, in the coming months, as we see, what the spread of the disease looks like in folks who are fully vaccinated, we hope that we will be able to roll back some more of the measures that we've put in place over the last year to reduce the spread of COVID. Another big announcement that came from the state this week or late last week that'll go into effect on the 26th, this coming Friday, is the new youth and adult recreational sports guidance. some of the changes that are in there are around allowing some of the red tier sports to occur in the purple tier. So if the case rates remain lower than 14, some of those red tier sports could continue. So if, for instance, we do go into the red tier and some of those sports opened up, if we happen to go back in the purple tier in a couple of weeks because our case counts were going up, those sports would not have to shut down immediately. We would watch and see what the case rates are before having to shut those down potentially. There additionally are some testing requirements and recommendations for youth sports, recommendations around cohorts in sports, as well as reinforcement that at all times when youth and adult recreational sports are happening, that people use face coverings and are distanced when they're not on the field or on the playing court. Also, it talks about limitations on observers. These are still non-spectator events, so no spectator events are allowed in sports currently, but we do recognize that there are need for adult supervision of many of our youth, especially. Adults who are needed to supervise their young athletes while they're either practicing or playing and competing in a sport are allowed to attend the events, but we do ask to limit that to only the necessary adult supervision who would be needed to oversee the appropriate that young athlete at the appropriate age. As time passes and we see things improving, case rates improving even more than they are now, we should expect more guidance to come on other adult sports and other sporting events. CDPH is working on that currently, and so hopefully in the coming weeks we'll have some more guidance around other adult sports and recreational sports. So lastly, I just want to say, it's been a year since we first recognized that this virus was spreading worldwide and a global pandemic was occurring. We've all come together to avert disaster, to protect lives, protect our community. Many have endured hardships such as financial losses, effects on social emotional health and well-being, as well as enduring the effects of those who have had COVID and are either still suffering from long-term effects of the disease or worse, those who have died. Many have worked tirelessly to support this effort, from our hospitals and clinical teams that kept working in the face of the dangerous virus that threatened not only their patients but themselves. Frontline workers, from first responders to grocery store clerks, from our teachers to our farm workers, from our public health teams investigating thousands of COVID cases to our dedicated EOC and JIC staff who have fielded over 30,000 inquiries since the beginning of this emergency response. We're all tired. We're all ready for this to end. It feels like we're on the precipice of a larger change, but like a marathon, the last mile can be the hardest and the longest, seeming to drag on forever. We need to practice patience and prudence as we start to open up society again. So let's take it slowly, not to lose ground that we've gained, and we'll make it to the finish line together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hoffman. I don't know if any of the board members have questions now or if we want to hear from the sheriff and Michelle, if they have anything to add. Michelle shaking her head no. And so is the sheriff. Okay. Any of the board members have a question or two for Dr. Hoffman? Supervisor Bohn?
Yeah, I've got this question quite a bit in the last couple of weeks, and I don't know if there's anything to it. Do we suffer any repercussions from the state on our level of vaccines if we don't follow their matrix exactly? I know we've switched around, but is there any worry of that?
We're not sure yet, I think is the real answer. I don't think that there's, the places that have seen vaccine taken away from them were places that were sitting on stockpiles of sometimes 10,000 or more doses of vaccine. So we have never been in that position in Humboldt County, and our our stores continue to be spent down to zero pretty much each week. So that doesn't seem to be something that is likely to affect us here. In terms of some of the other recommendations that are coming down from how we utilize the vaccine, the current allocation is based on 70-30% split, so 70% based on age, and that age allocation at the state level is 65 plus population, and then the work groups that includes the educators, first responders, and food and agriculture make up 30% of that allocation. And then there was a recent recommendation from the governor's office that at least 10% of your allocation should go to educators. So we've been meeting all of those for sure. And so I don't think that anything we're doing should affect our allocation. The one area that we have seen need for specific attention, and we're working on that and trying to focus on that right now, is in the Latinx community, Spanish-speaking groups who seem to be underrepresented as a ethnic minority in terms of getting the vaccine out to those populations. So we're in active talks now to try to figure out ways to get more of our Latinx Spanish-speaking population vaccinated in Humboldt County.
That's great. Now, and then the other thing I've got, what is your recommendations for the schools? I see some of the schools have started today, the K through 8. Some of them are, getting back. I know people are saying school buses are on the road. What is your recommendation and what is the warning for teachers? I know a lot of the schools have been in since day one and have actually done a pretty miraculous job getting the job done. And I applaud them for that. What is your recommendation for the schools that haven't and are getting ready to open up?
Yeah, we continue to support schools opening. Moving into the red tier is definitely going to make that more widely available for schools that have not been open to this point. I think the new school guidance is very robust and very safe. Testing recommendations are there to, enhance even more the security of both the kids and the educators and the support staff in those schools. So yeah, we fully support reopening, and I know many of the schools who have not opened to this point, are working right now on their reopening plans. So we'll continue to support that.
And then on your 14% of the population being vaccinated, do you take the 0 to 16 out of that number, or is that the total 134,600 and whatever?
Yeah, that's of the total 100 of all.
Have we taken into consideration that the national average is 31% aren't going to take the vaccine? So I imagine we will follow that pretty much by guidelines. So that almost takes out, 40,000 people, and then take out, we're actually doing, I look at it as doing better because there are people that aren't going to take it. And I'm sure we've already gone across that. I know we have.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, Supervisor Bohn. So clearly that 14% is not of the total population who could be vaccinated, because the vaccines are not approved for children at this time under the age of 16. So, when you look at it in the broader sense, we were making good headway. We really are. I think the number for the 75 plus being that nearly 60% of those have received their first shot is really emblematic of where we're at in the vaccine effort. And then hopefully with some of the things that are changing, with more vaccine coming our way, with a third vaccine hopefully getting approved later this week, Johnson & Johnson, with efforts to improve the vaccine supply, it could be as soon as a few months or later in the spring or summer that vaccine will be much more widely available, and we won't have the line anymore. It'll just become, whoever wants it can get it at that time.
Okay, last one. I really think we should reach out to our medical provider partners. I mean, Mad River's just killing it. St. Joe's, Southern Humboldt, everybody, Open Door, everybody has just stepped up immensely and is knocking it out of the park. And I wanted people to know, back on this 25-30%, that Thursday night, St. Joe's Hospital is going to have a forum on the science and safety behind the COVID vaccines with Roberta Hawkins, who is an infectious disease specialist who's worked with Dr. Fauci back in the AIDS days. And then Amy Phillips, their MD, Chief Clinical Officer from Providence. And I think if you go to their site, I think we should probably push that so people get the whole idea behind the safety and the science of a vaccine, so they're getting the full value of why they should be taking it, and or to clarify why they should be taking it, and maybe take some of the naysayers going, well, maybe I should be taking it. But it sounds like a pretty in-depth review, and I want to thank our medical partners, our private medical partners out there. And I know I didn't name them all, but that are really stepping up and knocking this out of the park for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bohn. Supervisor Bushnell.
Hi, I wanted to echo what Supervisor Bohn said with the medical partners. In my district, Southern Humboldt, Redwood Rural, Open Door, Redwood Memorial, amazing information and reach outs. And I know that Dr. Hoffman and Michelle Stevens, you guys are helping direct that. So I want to thank you guys also. I have a question. I'm still having some constituents that are having difficulties at time navigating the system through the internet. And so I want to ask specifically Dr. Hoffman, if you could just give a number, and maybe it's through Sheriff Hansel, that they can call if they're not able to access what they want to on the internet, please.
Yeah, definitely. So the Joint Information Center at 441-5000 is available to help anyone who isn't able to fill out the interest form online. And they've also been helping people register for appointments through the online scheduling system for people who don't have someone who can help or don't have the ability to do that themselves. We fully expect that to continue as we move on to the state-based system in the next month called My Turn. And so we're going to be bringing on more staff to help people do that registration through that program as well in the coming month.
Thank you. And one last thing, when do we anticipate, or do you have an idea when we would be offering the vaccines to essential workers such as grocery store clerks and that type of people or criteria?
Yeah, so we're working on food and agriculture currently, and each group kind of has its own differences and challenges. So with the educators, we worked with HCOE, being that it was an organization that oversees a large majority of the schools in Humboldt County. There's not really that kind of organizational structure for food and agriculture, but we're starting to reach out to businesses to get some surveys out there, figure out which are the larger businesses that we could start to vaccinate, and then come up with a strategy going forward for other employers in that sector. In terms of other ways that this has worked in other counties that are utilizing the program that I was mentioning, My Turn, you can use My Turn also to kind of certify that you're in a certain business sector, like food and agriculture, like a restaurant worker or a grocery store worker. So we expect that will also come online in the coming month as we transition into My Turn, and Blue Shield coming on as the third-party administrator. So I would think, in March, we're going to start to see sectors of food and agriculture open up. And again, as we get through the line that's open currently and also get more vaccine.
Thank you. And lastly, I'd like to thank you both for being responsive to my constituents that I forward emails on to, and to helping me facilitate that elderly population that needed some assistance to get their vaccines.
You're very welcome. And
thanks for sending them our way too.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah.
We appreciate, and we want to any way that we can get folks in for vaccine appointments, especially that older population. We understand it's a struggle for many. So thank you.
Supervisor Wilson?
Yeah, it's just what I keep seeing, or I guess mostly a comment from some of my older constituents, is hear this messaging from the county as if the county has a lead on most of the vaccine. And oftentimes I have to remind them that the county only has really like 10% of the vaccine that it administers, and that primarily they should be looking at their, their healthcare organization that they're a part of, or, seek out their primary physician and ask, or within that organization. And I've found that then they get response a lot faster than just going through the county website. Although, I've had many people get through that and do just fine. It's just a reminder that, I think some people here sign up with the county and that's all you got to do. And then they get a little frustrated when they're waiting longer, when they see other people get vaccinated. So again, this is just a reminder to everyone that the county website really, I've signed up for it. I'm sure, a lot of people have done it, but really reach out to your primary physician or your primary healthcare organization to get in that queue as well. Because as many ways as you can try and get vaccinated, that I encourage people to do that. So thanks. And you guys have been doing really a great job of reaching out and responding when we're forwarding constituent concerns and those things. I really appreciate that. And yeah, it's true. This is kind of like the most frustrating part, as if it hasn't been a year of complete frustration on all kinds of levels, but this is just like a whole new brand of frustration that we're dealing with in terms of, and impatience amongst myself and, everyone around me. So we're working on it. So thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor Wilson. Just one comment on that is that I think we are seeing a slowdown in first doses over the last really almost 2 weeks now. So that's part of the reason that maybe folks are feeling a little, that the wait is a little longer. We do hope that that's going to open up in the coming weeks, that we'll have sort of another wave of more first doses opening up. So probably a lot of folks who've been waiting in line patiently for the last 2 or 3 weeks will get in the coming weeks.
All right. Well, I have some questions, but if Supervisor Madrone has some, you can certainly go first. I didn't see your hand up. So would you like to ask any questions? No?
No, I think everything's been answered for me. I just want to thank Dr. Hoffman and Director Stevens and everybody out there helping to get us vaccinated and moving forward. So as I said before, patience goes a long way. So thank you everybody for all what you're doing.
Okay, well, I think I have like 4 questions, some of them spurred by the conversation today. I do want to say my 90-year-old mother, 95-year-old or 94-year-old stepfather have both their shots now, and they're really excited and didn't have any side effects either time. So I felt much better knowing about that. So really do appreciate, helping connect people that are, especially the older folks. And what I know now that I didn't know before was that a lot of primary care physicians don't necessarily do the shots. And I think people were being told to reach out to their provider. They didn't always get, in fact, any information from the provider of what the process was. So, I'm glad that some of that confusion is over. But I wanted to ask, Supervisor Bushnell mentioned essential workers. And maybe it's just my impression, but it almost feels like what was the definition of essential worker when this all began seems to have morphed into something where essential workers aren't necessarily the same, because it just seems to be a difference. So some folks who were an essential worker or were kept working through all of this, they're saying, well, why am I in the next to last tier. So why is there kind of a difference there?
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor Bass. There have been a lot of changes from both the federal and the state level to the phases and tiers. And so that's, I think, really the main source of those changes. So a few weeks ago, the governor's office and CDPH really made the decision that we were going to stop at phase 1B tier 1. And so that's the current phase that we're in Humboldt County in terms of the workers. So that would be the educators, first responders, and the food and agriculture. And then after that, everything would go to age-based. And so we did have previously other phases and tiers. So there was a tier 2 in phase 1B, there was a phase 1C, and those included many of the other essential workers that were not mentioned in those 3 groups. And that, really was a decision made at the state level to move away from that. And given that the third-party administrator is going to be coming in and taking over allocation, I don't think we have any leeway or room for changes to that. The good news is that we have been making really good strides through the phase 1B work groups over the course of late January and throughout February. And I think we'll be poised to transition nicely to that age-based criteria, going into March and April with the third-party administrator coming on and taking over the allocation and the kind of overseeing all of those providers that we were mentioned who are currently doing the vast majority of the vaccinating.
Sorry. I guess the other question I've got quite a bit this weekend and some of the last week was, so once we do officially move to red, and that's the state, don't they announce that on Tuesdays? And I guess the piece that they want to know is, well, when do I get to reopen? Because some of them have, it's really a struggle to call employees back or, to buy, when you're a restaurant, to buy your supplies. So, I don't know how much leeway we have to give them some heads up, but I really would like to see us be able to give them a couple of days notice at least. And so I'm not sure what the practice is going to be once we find this out. So hoping.
Yeah, so the state releases that at noon today. We've been watching it very closely and, mentioned several times in the media over the course of the last week or that it does appear that we'll be moving to the red tier. That officially doesn't go into effect until the state says something, though, at noon. So once we move to the red tier, we do stay there for a minimum of 2 weeks, just like we did in January. But I do feel, and the sentiment here at Public Health is that this is a very different move than it was back in the first 2 weeks of January. It feels like the move is likely to stick, and that the trends are all headed in the right direction. So I feel much more confident about businesses reopening now than I did in January.
And thank you for that. It's I've just been telling people I can't promise anything because I really don't want to tell them like, oh, I was kidding, not really red. So I appreciate, taking the time to try to let people know it could be happening. And I'm hoping at noon that we find out for sure. So, all right. I don't see any other.
Virginia?
Yes, sir.
Really?
Oh, sorry. Your face I had to cover it up. Yes.
I'm sorry. I didn't get the answer. If he announces at noon today, the effect goes in at midnight tonight. I think she was talking about 2 or 3 days, but it actually goes into effect tonight. Knowing the spirit of Humboldt, they'll probably open at 3 o'clock today and just go for it like last time. But since the numbers are there, I don't think anybody's going to be writing anything. But I'm just saying, doesn't it start at midnight tonight? I think was the question. If I heard it, I didn't hear the answer.
What the question actually was, is there some way we can figure it out before it's actually announced by the state? And I think that's what the people calling. It's like, can't I have a little more heads up than that? But yeah, I mean, thank you though for mentioning the midnight part because, and I think you're right.
Yeah, it goes into effect tomorrow.
Okay.
Midnight. Okay.
All right. Well, I'll let everybody know. Keep my fingers crossed. All right. No other supervisors at this time have their hand up. So get over the participants. Okay. At this moment, there's no attendees with their hands up. Is that accurate, Ryan? Oh wait, there's one. Just popped in. Okay. All right, so we do have 2 in the queue at the moment. The first one is 7454 and followed by 3053. So welcome, Kent.
Virginia, I raised my hand when this topic first came up, so that's getting dropped sometime. This is Kent Sawatsky, one of those people who was wearing their mask in Costco when Dr. Fauci said we shouldn't wear masks. Looking forward to getting my vaccine sometime. Other people in Trinity County in my age group have gotten theirs, and allegedly there's ways to get them if you call in at some of the pharmacies at 4 a.m. or something, and they have limit. I don't know, but something's going on here that's a little hard for consistency, and I guess squeaky wheel gets the oil. I wanted to read you something here. This is on a website. It's Volaris Air, one of the least expensive airlines or reasonable airlines in Mexico. And here's the third world country and what they're doing there, or maybe second compared to us. All passengers traveling to the U.S. must present a negative COVID test result. Rapid and affordable tests are available at the airport. I'm not aware that I can find that in our airport, in LAX or SFO or anywhere. So I just really question why we can't get the same thing that I can get down in Hermosillo, Mexico. I've taken 3 of the COVID tests and, of course, negative on all of them. One was 212. Another one came in on 222 and another result on 222 also. One of those tests was taken Friday in the morning. The other was taken on Sunday. And the results came back to me within 3 hours or 4 hours for the same time period. My understanding is, and there's a question, for some reason I was led to believe since I had a flight change, I need another test to be within 72 hours, but I wasn't able to go to your Optum Serve. So can I get what would be a 4th test during that time period to try and enable myself to leave? And the other question, when are we going to get those quick, affordable tests available, not just necessarily at the airport, but at other facilities? I can't understand why those cannot be had. Those are some of my concerns and questions on this thing. I'm a self-diagnosed whatever I want to be. But what it takes as far as adult supervision at these kids' games, I would recommend that basically the parents need to be there, the grandparents need to be there. Adult supervision is not only the thing that's needed, I think the siblings may need to be there, and the people's friends need to be there to make sure they have supervision at these things. So short thing of what I'm saying here, I think if people socially distance and are respectful or stay in their family pods, the full participation at the children's things. And I really would hate to see if we change to purple or something that changing any way, shape, or form, unless there's science showing that those children are endangered out there. And I haven't heard any science regarding that. There doesn't seem to be much science in a lot of what these decisions are. So I'm asking our local scientists to do what they can to circumvent the process. And if I was out there with a business that's basically been shut down, I wouldn't wait till 3 o'clock, Rex. People are going to have to do what they got to do.
Right.
Despite what it is, thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Right. And our other hand that's up is Thomas. Welcome.
Good morning, Thomas Mulder here. This is the first time following Kent. I have to agree with everything you just said. That would be amazing to have testing available at our airports. You know, that would probably protect our community pretty well, especially the statements he said on the sports. I actually have a note here. Why can't a team of 10 players, baseball team, actually you'd have 12, have one coach and 2 times as many assistant coaches as they have players? So that way the parents, but good point about grandparents, the social importance of family pods, seeing children develop skills through life is crucial. And we've lost this for over a year. I heard something about 50% capacity now that we're going into red tier. To be honest with you, I've never seen any businesses. And once I traveled out of Southern Humboldt, actually, when I go to Northern Humboldt, I haven't seen anyone counting the amount of people going in and out of businesses. So I didn't even know that we were honoring that rule in the purple tier, to be truthful with you. I heard outside sports are very, very important. And I'm going to tie this back into something I've forgotten earlier comments. If outside sports and recreation is so crucial to our youth, why is the Southern Humboldt Community Park skate ramp red tagged right now? It's not a permanent structure. That would be amazing for the youth of our community to be utilizing that structure outside. We have, 6-7 days of dry weather right now. Think how great that would be if the kids were out there enjoying that right now. I think a year into this process, we really, really need to look at the social and emotional well-being of our youth and our future generations, and think about what is best for our community as a whole, factoring in everyone's risk factors. But there's what we've been doing. We need to change course and start getting kids back to normality. Even that I've talked to a lot of people that are in the higher age bracket that really emotionally are having a hard time not able to see different people within their family. And I know, I respect COVID, I respect that part, but I think that's one part I have not seen in this, all the science statistics, is the social, emotional well-being of our community as a whole. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Great, thank you, Thomas. And I do not see any hands up. So we'll return to the board. And I wanted to ask Dr. Hoffman if he wanted to comment on some of the rapid test airport comments or questions.
Well, in general, yeah, we have great testing capacity here. Our OptumServe site is currently running well under capacity. We increased it dramatically back in December in preparation for the surge. So we continue to encourage people to utilize that. I think you can often get same-day appointment at OptumServe, and through your doctor, many of them send those tests directly to public health, and we continue to have good capacity here at public health for doing tests in county. We do have many rapid tests, and we've been giving those out since early December to medical providers who were interested in utilizing those. There's talk of utilizing those in the schools and in youth sports as well, as a way to meet some of those testing recommendations and requirements. So yeah, they're definitely out there, and we have lots of them in Humboldt County, and we're working to develop those relationships to get them used as we open up more broadly.
And I guess I'd follow up because I have questions about the airports as well. And I think we've heard this before, and I can't imagine anyone getting their test back in like 3 hours. I think that was kind of amazing. But do you see that happening, that airports in the United States, or at least in California, are going to that testing procedure? Or is that just not something, that is happening regularly?
I'm not aware of any discussion locally or in the state of California about any of this sort of testing requirements. But we'll definitely, if we hear that, we'll come back to you on that.
Great, thank you. Does any other supervisor have a comment or question? Supervisor Bohn?
Well, and Supervisor Wilson made me think of this. As we fill out our form to the county about our age and our conditions and everything else, and I don't know, Supervisor Wilson liked the fact that we're considered non-essential after you filled out the form, but I got to agree with them. But when you fill it out, it asks if we have a primary. Could you guys, when you get that and look that it says a primary, could you set up a system where you forward it to the St. Joe's Health or to whoever? Do you guys do that now instead of, because it was said earlier, you need to fill out the site at the other? We should probably be one-stop shopping because we're geared for that. And I'd like people to know that once they fill out the form, you can blast it out to everybody. They don't have to fill 2-3 forms out. You know, I mean, CVS, I'm hearing people are getting into CVS because they're going on every day and filling it out. They're getting in there. So, but do we do that, or could we do that?
We do. Yeah, we've been doing that since we started it. And so periodically.
Okay, I didn't hear that. Okay.
Yeah, we periodically send those to Open Door or St. Joe's. And, you know, we work very closely to coordinate all those clinics with them. So our team meets with them, you know, almost daily to talk about their clinics and try to get them filled up.
Do you send them periodically or upon receipt?
You mean from the interest form?
Yeah, my form, when it gets to you, do you file it and then you go through them all and send them, or do you see, well, he's with?
I'm not sure the frequency that it gets sent, but I can check on that, Supervisor Bohn, and get back to you.
I just hope it's done fast. You don't have to tell me.
I think the main thing is we want clinics to stay full. We don't want them to go unbooked. So that's, you know, really the main focus of our team is to, you know, help the clinics that are not public health clinics fill up with the appropriate people. And so we use that interest form to do that.
Okay, any other questions? Doesn't appear so. Thank you for the update today. It is a little nice to have some potentially positive news. So we will let you guys jump off this and go do all your important work. And with that, we will actually move on to department items. And the first one is coming to us from the Child Support Services regarding the employment of a retired annuitant. And who's here to do a staff report on that? Yes, CAO Nilsson.
Thank you, Supervisor Bass. Before your board today, the Department of Child Support is requesting that your board approve the employment of Sharon Mitchell as a temporary retired annuitant as a Child Support Specialist 3. And also that your board adopt the attached resolution for the exception of the 180-day wait period of the California Public Employees Retirement System. And that concludes the staff report.
All right, thank you. Any supervisors have a question at this time?
Make a motion to accept staff report. Staff recommendation, excuse me.
Second.
All right, we have a motion that's been seconded. I'll open this up for public comment, and there's no hands up. Okay, we will go back to the board. So if there's no more conversation, Ryan, will you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Supervisor Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
Supervisor Bohn?
10-4.
Supervisor Bass?
Yes.
And Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes.
Thank you. Passes 5-0.
Thank you, Ryan. So the next two items are being brought to us from the clerk of the board, Ms. Kathy Hayes. And the first one is regarding the appointment of an at-large member to the Planning Commission. So, Kathy, would you fill us in?
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. The item before you today is to consider the appointment of an at-large member to the Humboldt County Planning Commission. The current vacancy is due to the expired term of at-large Commissioner Brian Mitchell. And at the time of posting, our office had received 6 applications for your consideration, and they are attached to the item before you today. Applicants were notified that the board would be considering this appointment today and were encouraged to call in and participate. And with that, I'll bring it back to the board.
Thank you, Kathy. So I see we have some of the applicants are on the Zoom, and I do have one person whose hand is up. But before we go to talk to this person, in consultation with the CAO and some others, I think, in the past we've had, write your top 3 or your top 2. And I think for this one, there's only one position to be filled. So I would like us to be cognizant of who the top 2 we think are, and then staff will put the numbers in a matrix and help us figure out how it all adds up, basically. So we can talk about that later if there are questions. But at this point, I would like to go to Marie Seibel. I hope I said your name right. Welcome. Oh, just push *6 to unmute. And if possible, I'd like the speakers to also do their comments within the 3-minute period. I'm not going to be as exact on that, but just a heads up. So, Marie, just press *6 to be unmuted. Ryan?
She's joined the meeting via Zoom on computer or a phone. So there should be a button at the bottom of the screen that says unmute. You're being asked to unmute yourself. Go ahead and click that button. If not, I can bring her into the meeting, and then that does not work.
So we're asking her to go down to the place where she can unmute herself, if I'm hearing you correctly. So, well, while Marie is working on that, I do have, I do have Jennifer that has her hand up. So let's do that one first. All right, welcome, Jennifer. Press *6 to unmute. Ryan, she was unmuted.
She was unmuted and she muted herself. I will just move them.
Did that? There's one. Okay. All right, I heard Jennifer first, so yes. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Esparia. I live in Southern Humboldt in Bryceland, and I've lived there for 10 years. I've just calling in to give myself be part of this. This was something that I applied for because I have a strong interest in land use and cannabis planning, and I've developed my experience through Humboldt County. So I felt that would be a good addition to the county. Not really sure what else to say about myself. I put in an application. I've worked several different industries besides cannabis and consulting. I worked in tourism for a number of years, in the ski industry. I've been basically I've been a self-starter at everything that I've done. And so I took this as a good opportunity to give back to community involvement.
All right, well, thank you very much for being willing to put your name in too. It's a lot of work, so we appreciate when folks are interested for sure. Do we have our other person on here now, Ryan? Mm-hmm.
She's on there. They just need to unmute themselves, which it looks like they have done now.
All right.
Hi. So this is Marie Seibel. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk this morning. And I apologize, technical difficulties with Zoom, inopportune timing. I just wanted to give you a quick introduction to myself. I've lived here in Humboldt for a little more than 6 years, and it's the best place on earth. I can't imagine living anywhere more wonderful than here. We just have so many resources and amazing people, and it's just, I'm an evangelist. My background is actually a little non-traditional when it comes to planning. I was a lawyer and an engineer. My training initially is undergrad and master's in mechanical engineering. I worked as an engineer, mechanical systems and software for several years and went back to school for law. And after graduating, I practiced various intellectual property, patent law, tech transactions, trademark law, and that kind of thing. So there is one thing I have brought from trademark law, and that Humboldt has probably one of the most valuable trademarks when it comes to cannabis. And I would really love to see the county exploit that and have people recognize what a great area we are for that. But just a couple skills that I think are transferable. I have the ability to be very impartial. My jobs have required me to see pretty much all sides of an issue. And I know that we have a lot of stakeholders in these decisions before the Planning Commission, people that are property owners, people in the cannabis industry, environmentalists. And I have the ability to consider all opinions and really, truly make a decision impartially. I'm very conscientious and thorough. You can count on me to do so much research, it's probably unnecessary. And I think if I am on the Planning Commission, I can give you very educated and well-considered decisions. One of the other skills I have for both engineering and law is problem spotting. It's not a particularly popular skill, I don't think, but I think it's very important to recognize the implications of decisions of the Planning Commission, and especially years down the line. It's very key to recognize that there may be issues up front and we have to consider that might not present themselves till 10 years down the line and you've bought a lawsuit because you haven't looked at the details right from the start. And I think my final skill is consensus building. Most of my career has been involved with getting people to reach mutual agreements. I've drafted so many settlement agreements and contracts, I couldn't even tell you. But the key thing for me is I want everyone to walk away from the table happy and feel like that they were treated fairly. So that's pretty much my background. You can see from my volunteer things, I'm very excited about housing. I've done some pro bono landlord-tenant work, and then since I've been up here in Humboldt, I've been involved in homeless work and also on the grand jury for 2 years. So that's given me a really good background, how the canton works and planning issues and housing issues and all kinds of other issues that have come up here. So thank you again for the opportunity to talk. And if you have any questions, I'm certainly open to them.
Great. Thank you, Marie, for your willingness to serve. And I don't know if there's questions at this point for Marie. All right, not at this point. So Ryan, do we have, I'm looking to see who else is on, and I don't see anyone raising their hand.
Yeah, unless they've called in on their phone, we would just need them to raise their hand by pressing *9. Otherwise, I don't see any other applicants in the attendee pool.
Okay, so if
we do have one.
Well, there's
and
one.
we do have a hand raised.
All right, well, let me scroll to that. All right. Well, the person whose phone number ends in 8910, you are now on. Welcome. Press *6 to unmute.
Hi there.
Oh,
thank
welcome.
you, Madam Chair and members of the Board of Supervisors. Really appreciate the opportunity to address you today. And it's been an honor and a privilege to represent the board as a whole over the last 4 years on the Planning Commission. When I first started attending Planning Commission meetings back in I think it was the 2011 housing element update. Most of the work that was done by the Planning Commission was traditional, house building projects or expanding your barn or, ditch work in the coastal zone. But in the time that I've been on, the effect of introducing the county's commercial cannabis land use ordinance has really revved up. And there's a huge backlog of work that the commission has to consider. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because even though I've only served for 4 years, I currently have the third most seniority on the commission. We do have a large number of them that have been appointed recently, and it's always good to have fresh blood, and I really I've appreciated a lot of the new additions. However, there is something to be said about the learning curve, and especially with the complexity of the cannabis land use ordinances. It really took me a considerable amount of reading and studying to be able to get to the point where I felt, comfortable in reading the staff reports and knowing and being able to identify where there were shortfalls or if it met the requirements. A little bit about myself. I started out as a CPA in the real estate and construction industry, and that led into several land use projects from the applicant side. So I understand the importance of getting a straightforward and decisive decision so that businesses don't spend a lot of money and then end up having their projects going nowhere. I believe it's extremely important that we have individuals on the commission that are balanced and don't have preconceived notions about being on a side or, I hate billboards or I hate this or that. I look at it in a very black and white. Does this meet the requirements or does it not? If I can make the findings, then generally I'm going to vote for it. And if I can't make the findings, I'm going to try to find a way to change the conditions of approval so that we can find a way to get there. But if a project is too far outside the bounds of what is in the public interest, then I will vote no. And the last thing I wanted to bring up is I do represent the county as a whole, but there is approximately 40% of the developable housing stock for low-income housing is in the McKinleyville area. And I've represented McKinleyville for 8 years as an elected member of the McKinleyville Unit School District. And while I'm not representing McKinleyville's needs exclusively, I do understand the specific challenges and opportunities that McKinleyville faces when large projects are slated for it. So I want to say once again, it's been an immense privilege to represent the Board of Supervisors on the Planning Commission. I'd be honored to continue on for another 4 years. And thank you so much for allowing me to explain why I'd like to continue to serve.
Right.
And lastly, I just wanted to point out, because I believe there has been some misinformation spread by a couple of public commenters, I have no affiliation with the cannabis industry myself. I do work for myself and do tax returns for individuals and businesses. They're not cannabis businesses. 2 years ago, I did try to do some assistance with some individuals that were owners of a cannabis business, but the relationship was terminated over 2 years ago, and I have no further involvement in the cannabis industry directly. So thank you again for my opportunity to speak.
All right. Thank you, Brian, for calling in. And Brian, I do not see any more hands. If you are someone who has put their name in for the Planning Commission, if you're on this, press star 9, so we'll know you are here. Nobody? Okay. Thank you, Ryan. Well, at this time then, if it's all right with the board, before we have discussion, I'd like to do public comment so that we can hear what they say before we actually start. Our first commenter is 7454. Welcome.
Virginia, I did want to thank you for the procedure here. It's the one I've seen before. My question is, are you weighting these the same as you before, whereas a person's choice is their number one choice, it gets 2 votes, and their second choice gets 1 vote, and then those are tallied? So I'm just curious as far as the procedure. I always appreciate someone taking the time to call in. That's always important to me. I did make one comment, and I don't know how many of you follow the Planning Commission, but I participate in quite a few of the meetings, much to the angst of some of them, and that I pull things off consent. Usually my comments take less than 3 minutes, and frequently they engage in a 20 or 30-minute discussion on a topic that was going through on consent till it was pulled. So I find that interesting. Whatever Thomas Mulder's got is what you want to look for as far as somebody coming in here. I haven't ever seen a fast study get on with relevant questions. It's been fantastic to have Thomas out there being on the Planning Commission. I think he's only been at 2 or 3 meetings, and already you can see he's earned the respect, in my opinion, of the fellow commissioners. And he does his homework. I haven't seen anybody really delve into projects. He drives by them frequently. I've always said regarding the Planning Commission, if you have somebody who uses the phrase that a picture's worth 1,000 words and a site visit's worth 1,000 pictures, I always go by that one. So, it's always important for someone who has the time, to invest time, because I think to do this, a lot of these things have like 8 different items on the agenda, frequently 140 pages or 100 pages plus as far as that. And a lot of stuff that goes into doing the job. So for those of you who put your name in here, and if you don't get it, I encourage you to continue to put your name in there. And I appreciate all of these people, their willingness to serve. And I just thought I'd let you know, Virginia, your 2.5-minute timer is not audible, at least to me, when I'm speaking on this thing. So maybe that's just my bad hearing. But again, thanks and good luck with your decision. It'll be interesting to see how this moves forward.
Great. Thank you, Kent. And I'll see if I can get that closer to the microphone here. Alrighty. So we have the next person is 3053. Welcome.
Good morning, Thomas Mulder here. Well, being as someone who technically is a drug dealer, according to the federal government, I think the county of Humboldt no longer has to be concerned as long as people are open in an illegal business that's licensed by the state of California or conducting activities for a licensed company, to not be concerned of anybody in the cannabis industry. As someone new to the Planning Commission, I would say I followed for years, so the learning curve for me personally wasn't challenging. So maybe if you're worried about learning curves, you pay attention to those that have followed or been engaged in policy and the procedures in which things are. The one thing I would say as far as time commitment, I think that's something you'll have to be, whoever you choose needs to be solid on it. Originally, with me going into this, I had budgeted with having conversations with 2 commissioners to budget 15 to 20 hours a month for the Planning Commission. I will admit I was wrong. I think it's more like 20 to 25 hours. It's about, for me personally, and maybe I'm reading through things more, it's about 8 hours of prep for going through all the packets for the meeting, plus the meetings, which are usually about 3.5 hours. So if you're meeting twice a month, you're probably actually going more into that 20 to 25 hours to really do your due diligence and look through all the packets. I'm not leaning towards anyone. I don't even know if that'd be appropriate for me to say, to lean towards someone, but those are just some comments of someone that's newly appointed and been through 2 meetings. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Thomas, for calling in. And the next, last hand at this moment that is raised is from phone number ending in 0151. And there you go. Welcome.
Hi, Dottie Russell from Southern Humboldt. So I'd like to say that I think that for the idea of the Board of Supervisors having the Ethics Committee again, which I'd like to see happen. But as far as the planning commissioners are concerned, I think it's really important that we take out the attacking of an individual. I think it's completely inappropriate, as we've heard over the last several months, different comments that people have made that have been specifically directed at an individual. I think it's unbelievably inappropriate and unprofessional. So based on that, and also based on what I consider to be abuse, the abuse of the county on people and their property, or churches and their property, it is abuse. It needs to stop. And I like the idea of one of the candidates, I think it was possibly, well, Marie and Jennifer both sounded really good to me, but the idea of working together and finding a solution. So mediating would make a lot of good sense. If there's a buzzer, I'm not hearing it, so you can let me know when it's time. But so I just really urge you to do two things. One is, well, maybe three. Stop the abuse of property owners, because it's wrong and it needs to stop, and it's a violation of our rights. Number one. Number two, to have somebody that's not going to take things so passionate and personally to try to destroy somebody's life, like and to have somebody that's interested in the housing for all economic groups, and do it all with the idea of sustainability, accessibility, and mostly with kindness and love, because I'm not feeling the kindness and love that I would hope that I would get in return from my kindness. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dottie. And I do not see any more hands raised. And so with that, we will go back to the board. I would like to ask our CIO if she could clarify how this is going to go with what our first and seconds are, and how it gets tabulated, because I don't quite remember.
Sure, absolutely, Chair Bass. I have a little spreadsheet here with the names of the applicants, and I will record your number 1 and 2 rankings.
Okay. And does everyone have this in front of them? Supervisor Wilson?
I don't, but how do the rankings weigh? Like, what is that? How does that, so we give a ranking, where does that go? Is this like a ranked choice voting sort of thing, where if your first vote doesn't, what's the process, or what's the math, I guess?
Sure, through the chair. If you, for example, select somebody as number 1, I will place number 1 on your sheet in your column. And if you place somebody as number 2, I'll place a 2 in that column, and I can share my screen. That might help. You're not seeing that, are you? That's not the right. Is that? Are you seeing it?
I see it.
Okay.
No, you
Well,
got
not
you
now.
had it there. Go
Oh, you
back.
had it?
Yeah.
Go back one.
There you
go.
Okay, sorry. So for example, if Supervisor Wilson says 1 and 2, we'll be able to do, I'll be able to tabulate over on the side, and obvious at the bottom, or not on the bottom and to the right. And obviously, if you have a lower score, that means you're number 1 across. And sorry, as I'm trying to look at you all and explain this, it's a little confusing. So basically, so Supervisor Bass said 1 and 2, then we would be able to also tabulate the score over here on the right, which I will insert that formula right now. Is this making sense, Supervisor? This is a process that we've done in the past.
I see. And so, but does 2 give you a higher score? Like, are we trying to get the high score or to the low score? Like, where?
Technically, technically you're going with a low score, meaning you're number 1 across the board. So you're technically going for a low score.
Maybe we should be giving weight a 2 to our number 1s, because if we do that, low score, the person who gets nobody votes for them gets the lowest score of 0.
No.
Well, I think we would disqualify zeros, but if you want to, however your board wants to do it, we can do it.
Okay.
Supervisor Wilson, what are your thoughts on that? And I think Supervisor Bohn also had something to add. Did you? I thought I heard him anyway.
No, I'm good with the way we've done it in the past.
So it seems to me that we would probably, if we're doing 2 of them, that we would probably weight our number 1 as a 2 and our number 2 as a 1. Sorry to get confusing about that. And then at least the worst, the high score is, the one with the most votes wins kind of thing. I think that would probably be less confusing. I'm not, if that's the way we want to do it. So.
All right. Yes, Supervisor Bushnell. We can't.
I'm sorry. Director Nilsson, can you, so a 1 is if we choose our candidate, our number 1 is a 1, right? My first choice would be a 1.
Your first choice based on what Supervisor Wilson said is a 2. So you're gonna tell me your first selection, your highest selection, and I'm gonna put a 2 in that box under your name.
Can we just do the first round, and if somebody gets 3 1s, then they're the choice? Because I mean and then we can decipher this out. Whether because I mean golf tournaments go by low score and they do match play and it's all different too. Why don't we just I'll make a motion for Brian Mitchell. I'm not first, Bass is, should go last. I'll make a motion for Brian Mitchell.
Let's not make, Supervisor Bohn, I appreciate trying to jumpstart this. I just think we ought to have everyone at least do their rankings to see. And it maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like we've asked everybody to go through this exercise. So,
well, we're changing the exercise. So I was just, if we're changing it, just change it. We'll change it the way you guys want. That's fine.
Well, I'm fine the way Amy, the CIO had it the first time. I think I can agree with Supervisor Bohn. If I see 3 1s or 4 1s, that it would indicate that person would be good. Anyway, Amy. And then Michelle.
We've also done it just with X's, and so sometimes the number of X's just provides a clear answer for your board. So maybe we just leave the numbers out the first time and see how it goes.
Okay, that actually works for me. Does that, Supervisor Bohn, Supervisor Wilson?
Can I get an X by Brian Mitchell?
Can we, hold on just a moment, Supervisor Bohn. Supervisor Wilson, you understand you're okay with this also?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
If they're even ranking, I'm okay with that. So
okay.
Yeah.
And I'm actually I think I'll call on you guys since I've got all these pictures right here. Yes, Rex?
And I don't know, and I've been doing this a while. We had a quality bunch of applicants, and I want to thank them all. It's just, with so much stuff going on, I feel comfortable, and I guess sometimes I wear old sweatshirts because they're comfortable, and I guess I'll throw Mitchell in there, as my old sweatshirt. He's done the job. I don't think I've talked to him maybe 2 or 3 times in the last 4 years, but he does the job, and I think he can step forward and do the job. And having 2 new people on the board kind of scares me with everything we're going through. So, and I really liked this part about, and knowing McKinleyville's angst with having all that much of the affordable housing, I appreciated that comment too, because I think he's got their best interests. So
thank you, Supervisor Bohn. And from my part, since you kind of went this direction as well, I also, we had some really varied interests that were on the applications, and they're all very, very unique and actually really good. But I'm kind of in the same situation where, I think Brian has done a good job. I don't think there's any reason to replace him, but we'll see when we get down to all the 1s and 2s, or not the X's. Yeah, Supervisor Wilson.
Well, I would say that I agree with Supervisor Bohn with relationship to the math on this. If there are 3 of us that have Brian as our primary candidate, we really don't have to go through this exercise in terms of the math unless we really want to. I would say that Brian, I don't want to call him an old sweatshirt necessarily, but I do think that he's done a really good job. And there are things I disagree with him on and things I agree with him on in terms of when he's doing this analysis. But I do believe he does his homework. He's there. He's fair and informed and intelligent. and has been, doing a really good job. And I agree that that the other applicants that we received here, there is some really good depth and understanding within there too, and a lot of great candidates in there. But the experience of the current commissioner, I think, weighs heavily in my preference. So I don't know. I mean, I think if what I'm hearing from Supervisor Bohn and Supervisor Bass, so I'm just like, when I'm talking to you, I see your names on the thing, and sometimes it jumps in. So, I mean, from my perspective, if we want to go through this exercise, we can, but it seems like we're leaning into a space where I think a motion should be entertained, but I'm open. So,
thank you. And I do see Supervisor Madrone has his hand up, and I tend to agree with what Supervisor Wilson said, that Supervisor Madrone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I think this chart's going to be more useful on the next item, where we have 2 positions and a number of candidates as well. I very much agree with the general comments that have just been made. I would like to closely associate myself with Supervisor Wilson and Supervisor Bohn's comments about Commissioner Mitchell. I think he's done a fantastic job of working very hard to do the homework. And as Thomas Mulder said, it is a significant commitment on a regular basis if you're really going to be informed and try to make decisions that make sense and can be supported by findings and all those good things. So I would say that I would be a 4th vote for Commissioner Mitchell to be reappointed. So I think this is going to be able to be taken care of quite easily once we hear from Supervisor Bushnell. Thank you.
Call for the vote.
And before I go to Supervisor Bushnell, Supervisor Wilson, is your hand still supposed to be up? Or you don't? Okay, just making sure. All right, got it. And yes, Supervisor Bushnell, would definitely like to hear your thoughts on this.
Thank you. I want to first thank the applicants. It's a large commitment to even put your name in and be considered, and also to the applicants that called in and made the public comment. It's not easy to do through Zoom. It's rather nerve-wracking, actually. So I appreciate them calling in and giving us a little bit of information about themselves. With that being said, I am also a 5th yes for Mr. Mitchell. I think his institutional knowledge of the Planning Commission is something that we need to retain at this time. And I want to thank once again all the applicants.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Wilson, your hand's back up. Okay.
Yeah. With that, I'd like to make a motion that we reappoint.
I should let Supervisor Bohn have this original motion.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. That was 15 minutes ago.
I just wanted to make the motion to reappoint Commissioner Brian Mitchell to another term. And I want to say that we go through this process, we get these applications, they remain in our file, and we request that our staff reach out to those folks every time we go through a process again to make sure that they're, they want to be back in that thing. So it is not without, some real benefit that we go through this process and we receive those applications and we have those folks there. And as Michelle said, it is, it's a bit of a thing to apply for something like this, but now those folks have done it, right? And there are other committees and other things within the county. So, they're have exercised their ability to do this and can also use that to seek out other ways to participate if this doesn't work out. So thank you.
I probably should not have let you go through all that before we had a second, but
second,
thank you.
The motion.
Second, we have a second. All right. And Supervisor Madrone, your hand is up again.
Well, I just wanted to second the motion, but also, as others have said, thank the applicants for participating, and please continue to do so. There's a lot of help we need.
All right, thank you. And with that, Ryan, or Kathy, or Ryan, I guess it's Ryan. Ryan, will you please do a roll call vote?
Yes, thank you, Chair Bass. Supervisor Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes.
Supervisor Bohn?
I want to say no. Yeah, yes.
Su- Supervisor Madrone,
What a jokester. Yes.
Supervisor Bass.
Yes.
Thank you. Passes 5-0.
All right, so we'll move on to the second one, which might be a little more challenging. And this also comes to us from the clerk of the board, and it's regarding appointments to the Measure Z committee. So Kathy?
Yep. Once again, Madam Chair, members of the board, the item before you is to consider the appointment of 2 at-large members to the Citizens Advisory Committee on Measure Z. The current vacancies are due to the expired term of at-large committee member Laura Canzoneri, who has decided to not seek reappointment, and the sudden passing of at-large Commissioner Rich Ames. At the time of our posting, we had currently 5 applications that are included in your packet, but I would like to clarify that the current alternate member on the Measure Z is Eddie Morgan, and we inadvertently left his application out of the packet. Mr. Morgan is requesting to be considered for appointment to the at-large position, so I would like to add his name to the list of applicants that are included in your packet. And with that, I will turn it back over to the board.
I have a question, Kathy. So
Sure.
if, let's say if both of we have 2 people that are interested in this that are both coming from the alternates, correct?
Correct.
So does that mean that there will be 2 alternate openings available?
Yeah. Yes, that's correct, Chair
Only if you
Bass.
appoint them.
No, I'm just saying, I just didn't know if that would just trigger another process where we come back in a couple more weeks, that's all.
Your board, it's really left up to your board. Your board could choose to fill those alternate positions at this time, or we could do it in the future, depending on who the appointed at-large members are.
All right. Let's see, I guess we'll go see if any of them are on here to visit with us today. If you are interested in this position, and please do, there's one, raise your hand by pressing *9, and then we will go. Wait, I hear one, Supervisor Wilson. I was just going to go out and hear from them first before we ask questions, but is there?
Just a quick one. Who's the other alternate?
Justin Robbins, I think, is currently is sitting with alternate.
Okay, thank you. That's just clarification. Thank you.
Now, Michelle, did you want to ask your question now before we hear from the folks? Okay.
So, Kathy, the other application that was left out, can you say who that was?
Eddie Morgan is currently serving as the alternate on the Measure Z committee and wishes to be considered for the at-large position.
So thank you. I don't know him. I apologize. Is there any information that I could get on him, an application?
We could provide that to you. Yes, we could provide that to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Rex? I mean, Supervisor Bohn?
Can we take a 5-minute break so we can get that forwarded to us, you guys? So,
And is there any,
so he's on a level playing ground, and you said you wanted a break at 11 anyway, so.
Okay,
we could
I
talk
think
for
that's
7
a
minutes.
good idea. All right, so we'll come back. Excellent idea, Supervisor Bohn. We'll come back at 11 o'clock.
I'm done
Is
for
that
the
enough
day.
room? Is that enough time for you, Kathy, to track Eddie's info down? Okay. All right, thank you. We'll be back. Waiting to get that. Are there any questions from the board members at this point while we're just in waiting?
Could we take the public comment from the applicants that are here?
Yes, and Supervisor Wilson had his hand up, and then I'll definitely do that, Supervisor Bohn.
We could have the application be brought up on the screen, share screen if that's necessary, and the information is available. If there's not anything that's required to be redacted on it.
Yeah, there is. We just got it. We would have to redact stuff to do that, I think.
And I know we do have some of the folks on the call. So I'll wait for Supervisor Bushnell, as I believe she's going to get the information. So.
Sorry.
Well, how about we do move forward with letting some of the applicants who are on and have their hand up talk? Is that okay with everybody? Yeah. All right. So, while Supervisor Bushnell is reviewing that, Bob Bronkel, I do see your hand up. And so if you are on, please start talking.
Madam Chair and board members, I am interested in serving on the Measure Z committee to help ensure that projects recommended for a Measure Z funding allocation offer the highest benefit to cost ratio. I believe that my appointment on the committee will complement the existing makeup of the committee by having a voice for roads, similar to the way that law enforcement and fire both have dedicated seats on the committee. As a public works employee, I bring firsthand experience with the challenge of budgeting and project prioritization when the demand for services and projects exceeds the available budget. I have been following the work of the Measure Z committee since its inception. I agree with the concerns that Glenn Zemer has regarding the trend of decreasing unallocated funds that are at the discretion of the committee to recommend for allocation. With this downward trend of unallocated funding each year, it becomes more critical in determining which projects should be recommended for funding. As a taxpayer, I want to help ensure that projects are being recommended to your board for funding that offer the public the greatest bang for the buck. Thank you for your consideration.
All right. Thank you, Bob. And I see Roman, excuse me. Roman, if you press *6, you will be on.
Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Roman Rubalcava. I'm a resident of Lolita, and I'm a very active participant in my community. I happen to be bilingual in English and Spanish. I'm bicultural, Mexican-American. I'm a member of several community groups. I am a member of the Backcountry Horsemen's group of the Redwood chapter here. A member of Humboldt Wild Swimmers, a bunch of crazy people that like to swim in the lagoons and the bay. I'm a member of the College of the Redwoods teaching community. I teach fire technology part-time. I'm also a Red Cross disaster action team volunteer, and I'm a member of the Lolita Volunteer Fire Department. I've been a licensed paramedic for over 30 years, and my license is still current and active. Professionally, I'm retired. I was a captain with the Sacramento Metropolitan Fire District in the Division of Training. Prior to that, I worked for the San Francisco Fire Department. And concurrently, for over 20 years, I was a volunteer firefighter while I was a professional firefighter. Lastly, I served as the fire chief in Hayfork Fire Protection District. And as such, I got quite a bunch of experience with budgeting and dealing with local government issues. I have an AA degree in fire technology. I have a bachelor's degree from UC Davis in communications. But more important than all that, I'm a local resident, and I'd like to see the community enhanced by improved public safety. I have a perspective of being a lifelong public safety officer and an active community member. I understand there's lots of challenges when it comes to budgeting and dealing with public money. And I think we have to be have a certain level of fiduciary responsibility and try to get the biggest bang for our buck. I understand that we need to balance needs between our police, our fire, EMS, and rescue, but also with the roads. We also have to address as public safety, mental health concerns, needle exchange programs, and there are other programs as well. And I've tried to get myself up to speed by reading the past meeting minutes and looking at applications for Measure Z money, both that were funded and some that were left unfunded. And I understand all of these needs are important. And as a taxpayer and as a citizen, you know, I think I'd like to have a voice in how this money is distributed here in Humboldt County for public safety, you know, to ensure that we are getting the biggest amount of good for the most people with the limited funds that we have available. And just want to thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak this morning and let you know I would like to serve on this board. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And I called you Roman because that's what was on the screen, but your first name is listed as Eric, so I apologize for that. And my understanding is, well, I believe Mr. Morgan is on. If you are on, press *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to be unmuted. This is not the public comment period. This is for folks who have put their name in. So, okay, welcome. 46, is this you, Eddie?
This is me. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Well, first I'd like to thank all the board and the people that are working there. My name is Eddie Morgan. I am a local business owner. I own a business in Old Town. I'm very involved in the community. I also, not that long ago, 2017, was still involved in the military, and the last appointment was in 2015, where I was a major and a deputy engineer for a very large military base, where we dealt with budgeting, road building, and a lot of the things that involve accounting and working with structures. I've been on the Measure Z board as a non-voting member for the last 4 months, learning the different issues and subjects that are being taken under consideration, and ask all of you humbly if you take in consideration me being a voting member. I've participated in a lot of different projects in our community. I've been on the civil grand jury for a year, and I'm very well in tune with our community. And there's, I think, a wealth. I also speak 4 languages. I speak Spanish very fluently. As a matter of fact, English is not my first language. And there's a lot of other organizations that I belong that gives me access to hear and listen what the people feel what people want in our community, and what are the issues that are confronting them. And I think with the experience of having been on Measure Z as a non-voting member and then moving up to a voting member is a good path. And also having the experience of being a military officer, as a planning officer, and as a deputy engineer, a lot of the challenges and things that the Measure Z has to look at have fallen the things that I have dealt with before, and having the opportunity to serve the community would be an honor, and I think I would do a good job for the county. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Eddie. Do we have anyone else that has called in that wishes to let us know you're on here as an applicant? I don't see any, so that's it for listening, hearing who the folks are. So, yes, Ryan?
Catherine Muncie just raised her hand, Chair.
Just raised your hand. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your quick eyes. So, Catherine, are you?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
All right. Yes. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you. Good morning and welcome. Thank you for having me. Sorry. I'm very interested in participating in the committee. I have worked extensively with members of law enforcement and also worked in community organizations, and feel as if My perspective and my experience might be helpful in determining the allocation of scarce resources. Specifically, I have had a lot of experience in the downtown Eureka area, but also moving north into Arcata and McKinleyville, working with people experiencing homelessness and behavioral health issues, and working with the law enforcement professionals that are out on the streets on a daily basis. So I appreciate any consideration of my application. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Great. Thank you, Catherine, for calling in. And before I say I see no more numbers or hands, Ryan, I'm going to ask you.
Chair, I do not see any other hands or applicants either this time.
All right. Thank you. So does the board, are you all right if we go to public comment, or Supervisor Wilson, did you want to ask your question first?
Just a clarifying question of staff. If this board, I think you already asked it, if with this board moves to move folks from alternates into seats, are we in a place where we can make recommendations for this for two other people to go into alternate?
I see the attorney, county counsel waved his hand.
Thank you, Chair. As the agenda is specifically drafted for at-large members, I'd recommend if you're filling the other positions, that would come back as a separate item.
Would that need to be advertised again, or can we make it just bring it back at our next meeting if we wanted to? County counsel.
I'm not sure what the process is for that, but for instance, with this one, someone wishing to serve as an alternate wouldn't have known that was something your board is considering today.
Okay. That's true. Sorry, your time's up. All right, so.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Supervisor Bohn.
Jefferson, is that definitive, or do you just feel that way? I thought, the way I understood it, we could fill the alternates out of this because it's one body. It's not, so the way I was understanding we would be able to fill the alternates if we happen to backload into the primary seats, because they still are all board members. It's not a classification. They're all going to serve on the Measure Z committee.
Supervisor Bohn, that would be my recommendation, because it was agendized as just for at-large members, not for alternates.
Well, why don't we go to public comment? Then we can have more conversation on what Supervisor Bohn brought up. So at this time, looking to see, we do have one hand raised for public comment. 7454. Welcome, Kent.
No, I can't see how with an unagendized item you could move forward or even consider moving forward. There may be people out there that don't want to be a primary on this, but be happy to be an alternate, and they're not getting a chance to participate in the process. So I really would take your counsel's advice. It's kind of common sense, but that's just my perception. I do also like the thing where you have someone, and the other decision we were talking about, a learning curve. And when you have an alternate that's already been in the process or familiarized themselves and has been workable, highly recommend that you bring that individual forward into the full-time position. I also started going through these people and trying to vet, and as far as someone who's this is kind of a little bit more of an at-large thing. We already have a public perception that you have people sitting in these chairs to represent the beneficiaries of the money that's being received there. And there is some angst out there when this is not actually strictly citizens, people who don't have a dog in the fight, don't have a prior history of backing a certain group or thing, sitting in these chairs. It seems to be that then they're in a position, perceived to be in a position, where they are lobbying for their own financial gain or for their fellow ex-workers or people they worked with in the past. So I kind of look at these things and try to find. There was one person who didn't speak, and I saw here it was a retired person, had a personal reference of Merritt Perry, and I always value what Merritt says. This person happens to be a rancher. My husband and I own a manual cattle sheep ranch in Arcata. So to me, it's a little bit more of those kind of people that I would consider, or if I was sitting in the dais, I'm not. But those kind of people seem to be the ones that should be your at-large representatives without having a potential dog in the fight. And again, I encourage anybody who's out there listening to reapply when it's a correct time to bring forward the at-large and maybe pay your dues for a little while and then move up the ladder. That's just my input. Thank you for my opportunity to speak.
All right, thank you, Kent. And next we do have Thomas. Welcome, Thomas.
Hello, Thomas Mulder here. Just some input. It's always good to get fresh new looks on committees, and maybe just an idea. If I was sitting in your shoes, maybe the idea of promoting one of the at-large unvoting or the alternates forward, and then picking one of the members that are not currently any part of Measure Z, just to get that new perspective plus the community or institutional knowledge. Just an idea. That way it might work out in the middle. I didn't really read all this. One thing I would say to remember in public safety when this was promoted, fire reduction is also fuel reduction alongside roads. Also having well-traveled roads for emergency personnel to make it to that. For lack of better words, we don't really have that right now within our county. So it'd be nice to have someone that's able to look at this process and really, really weigh out pros and cons when moving forward with funding recommendations to the Board of Supervisors, who have the final say in how that money is allocated. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Thomas. I am not seeing any more hands raised. So let's go back to the board with this. And no one's raising their hand. Supervisor Bohn.
Do you want us to just tell you how we feel and then we'll do to the magic voting board?
I mean, that's fine with me if we say first, and this one we were talking about, if we wanted to pick our top three because there are two positions. Amy, am I correct in that from our conversation before?
Well, Supervisor Bass, yes, in the past, your board has either selected your top three candidates and not necessarily ranking them 1 through 3. And again, I think I would recommend that we just use an X because also in the past, sometimes there's a clear couple front runners, particularly when there's 2 appointments. So I can share the screen and Chair Bass, you can.
You can, I'm actually thinking maybe we go through first and see kind of what our general consensus is. If we already have, like we did the last time, we wouldn't have to go through all the X's and stuff. I'm thinking, from my perspective, I would really like to see the 2 alternates move up because they have put time into it, and then ask everybody to, let us forward those applications for the alternate positions. But that is just my perspective. I mean, Supervisor Bohn, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Eddie does great service. I know he's pretty focused in Eureka, but I think he's done a great job, and he's been on it for 4 months. So I think I don't know how many meetings they've had, but my 3 would actually be, I think Justin Robbins has earned the right after 3.5 years, and he has been elected the vice chair, and he covers a lot of bases on the roads. Roads, public safety, and Shelter Cove. My number 2 is going to be Roman Rubalkova, and I've never met the man. I did have somebody call me, and he comes highly recommended, very amicable, very nice guy. My big thing is I've heard a couple board members talk about this all the time, and I guess I'll just throw it out there. The Latinx community's never been represented on this board, ever. and Eddie's bilingual too, but he's a Latinx. He's also bilingual. Brings a lot to the table. Seems a lot of fire oriented, but I don't think, Lolita Fire has a tax, so they did get air packs from us, but I mean, they haven't been asking for engines or anything. But he just brings a lot to the table and a lot of knowledge. And again, I don't know him. I wished I did, and I probably will after this. And then I wouldn't mind seeing Bob Bronco as a alternate, because I think Rhodes has been pretty much left out on this quite a bit. And I know that doesn't affect a lot of you as much as it does myself and Supervisor Bushnell, but my roads are bad. And the last 2 or 3 years, Public Works has busted their tail to get things done and to get some FEMA monies and everything else. So, I mean, our roads are getting better, and it's just through sheer hard work. But that's my three would be Robbins, Roman, and Bob.
Okay, well then I guess, Supervisor Bushnell, Wilson, and then Madrone. Supervisor Bushnell? There you go.
Thank you. So my number one choice is Justin Robbins, for the simple fact that he's been an alternate for 3 years and he's alternate vice chair right now, and his institutional knowledge of Measure Z committee. Also, he is, I did have a discussion with him. He is keenly aware of the issues with the Humboldt County roads, and also with what the community had intent, what their intent was for Measure Z funds when it was approved. And I'm going to work on my 2 and 3, but I'm going to say that's my 1.
Okay, Supervisor Wilson.
Yeah, I would agree at least with the first 2 with relationship to what Supervisor Bohn put out there. Eddie, and then Mr. Robbins would be my 1 and 2. And for me, the number 3 is Catherine Muncie. Go ahead.
Clarification, my number 2 wasn't Eddie. Eddie's on there already as an alternate for the last 4 months. My number 2 was for diversity, putting somebody from the Latinx community, and that would have been Roman, because we've talked about diversity. So I put Roman Baklava, is what I said, Rabalkova.
Okay. Well, then I guess I'll be different. I guess I'll have Eddie as my first one, Mr. Robbins is my second one, and Catherine Muncie is my third, because I really, there's a lot of discussion about what public safety is and means, and there's a lot of discussion about mental health services and those that arena and the needs for that connectivity, and so that's where I am. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, Supervisor Madrone.
Yeah, my first pick would be Bob Bronco. I think Bob, I've worked with Bob quite a bit in the last 2 years, and I find him to be a person with great integrity, hardworking, does his homework, really looks into issues and looks for ways to solve and resolve problems that have been long-standing. And I just cannot speak highly enough for the skills that I've seen Bob use in his thorough efforts to look at problems. And I also feel strongly that roads have not been well represented on Measure Z when you look at the way the monies have flowed. Not that Bob would be there just looking out for roads, because he, as he spoke, would be looking out for the best return for the dollar for the county on all the various issues that Measure Z tries to help. So Bob would be my first choice. Justin Robbins would be my second choice, and Eddie Morgan my third choice.
Okay.
Lots of good candidates. It's great to have everybody offering to do this service. It's an incredible committee.
All right. Yes, and thank you. And Supervisor Wilson, did you have another comment?
No, that was just a residual yellow.
Residual hand. Okay. Well, our CAO Nielsen, since we've kind of started talking about our in order, I'd like to figure out how because it seems like we do need some kind of a system here.
Well, how about I share the screen and let's make sure we're doing this correctly. Okay, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, so the one issue is that Supervisor Bushnell has only provided us with one selection at this point in time.
And I have another one too. I owe you my third.
Okay, so maybe we could complete that because right now all 5 of you have mentioned Justin Robbins. I did not use your 1, 2, or 3 ranking, so I can quickly go in and change that though if necessary.
My third would be Bob Bronkel, because I do want to see him on there, and that I would love to have him on as alternate. I just really think that the two that have, been putting the time in, deserve consideration for moving forward. And the former chair, Laura Canzanui, also did speak highly of both of the current alternates that are interested today in moving forward. Anyway, Supervisor Bushnell.
Thank you. My second choice is Bob Bronkel. And my third choice is going to be Roman.
Okay, so Supervisor Madrone has a question or comment.
Well, just an observation based on the X's without even applying a value to any of them. It would appear to me that Justin Robbins clearly has the support of all 5 of us. And then Bob Bronco has the next highest vote total of 4. So I would make a motion to appoint Justin Robbins and Bob Bronco to the 2 open alternate positions.
They're not alternate positions, they're the at-large positions.
Excuse me, yes, at large. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, well, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll
Someone
second the motion.
Huh?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any additional comment from supervisors? And Michelle, are your hand is still up? No. Okay. I don't see any other hands up, so I guess we'll go for a roll call vote. Ryan. Are you there? There you are.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Supervisor Bass?
Yes.
Supervisor Bohn?
No.
No. Supervisor Wilson?
I'll do yes, even though it's not quite what I was looking for, but yes is good enough for me for now.
Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
And Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes.
Thank you. It passes 4-1.
Well, I think I made my preference known that I still would have liked to put the alternates up, but I went with the X's. So, having said that, do we need to have it brought back for the to fill the now empty alternate seat?
So we're sure as a board, if we agree, we can't appoint the alternate today? It's still the same board. I still think we'd be okay. But we can bring it back. It doesn't, and then go through this again. I was just.
Well, I just, the county council is probably being super careful, which in these days I can understand that. So, Anyone have any final comments on this? Alrighty. So that'll move us on to our next item today. Excuse me, and that's our CIO's office regarding outstanding financial transactions. I almost skipped and went to planning and building instead, but so CIO Nielsen or Ms. Hayes.
Thank you, Chair Bass. I'll introduce our Assistant County Administrative Officer, Alicia Hayes, who will be delivering the staff report today. Mrs. Hayes serves as our Chief Budget Officer in her capacity as the Assistant County Administrative Officer. And with that, I will turn this over to Alicia.
Good morning, Chair Bass and members of the board. As a county, we are just 4 months away from beginning fiscal year 21-22, and there still remains outstanding items for fiscal year 19-20. As such, this agenda item is recommending that your board authorize the auditor to post all of the remaining transactions for fiscal year 19-20 as detailed in the staff report to finalize the year-end closing. This item comes to you today because staff received notification from the Auditor Controller on February 11th of the intention to close the year as is, with outstanding transactions to be processed in fiscal year 2021 as prior period adjustments. Staff have concerns that the as-is closing places the county at risk. In the decade that I've worked for the county, I have not experienced known financial transactions not being posted. Admittedly, this year has been challenging to manage departments while being short-staffed, dealing with stay-at-home orders, schooling kids at home, and doing everything through Zoom. Staff had worked tirelessly to continue serving the citizens of Humboldt County. I am pleased to report that the $1.4 million CARES Act transfer and the Prop 172 accruals that were detailed in today's report were posted as of yesterday, and also that the DHHS administrative charges were posted last week. At this point, the final step to moving forward responsibly is to post the final handful of transactions. Accordingly, staff are recommending that you authorize the Auditor Controller to post the final transactions and close the year so that staff can move on to managing the current fiscal year and begin preparing for the next fiscal year. As of today, there are 17 outstanding transactions detailed in today's report. 10 of those transactions belong to the County Administrative Office. 2 of the transactions were submitted in August 2020 and had multiple follow-up attempts with no communications from the Auditor Controller in response to the requested transactions. 2 of the salary transfer transactions were rejected by the Auditor Controller due to being unsubstantiated. This transaction was submitted in August, and the rejection was the only correspondence received from the Auditor Controller on February 2nd. On February 8th, staff asked for additional information as to the process associated to prior period adjustment transactions. One of the CARES Act transactions was approved by the Auditor Controller's staff in November, however, remains unposted. One transaction is for a significant balance of $3.4 million associated to a financial system failure in transferring employee health reimbursements. And finally, the certificate of payment transfers would typically be processed by the Auditor Controller's office. However, that has not occurred, and staff have followed up to inquire on the processing of those transactions on multiple occasions. With that, I conclude today's staff report and will gladly answer any questions your board may have.
All right, thank you, Alicia. Are there any questions from the board at this time? Okay, I'll go to see if there is public comment waiting. And something tells me, okay. Our first speaker is 7454. Welcome, Kent, and he'll be followed by Thomas. Okay, Kent, you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, took a couple tries. There seems to be a major dysfunction and possibly a lack of communication. Do you folks have in front of you by chance a 3-page explanation as far as why some of these things cannot be posted? I don't know. I don't have access to that, but my understanding is possibly those questions are all answered, and hopefully you've all read those and will understand some of the reasons that I understand by quick conversation that things may not have been able to be posted. We seem to have a real dysfunctionality between the CAO's office and the auditor controller, and both, I guess probably both point fingers at each other. But the reason we have an auditor controller is because some of us are very fussy about numbers, making sure there's documentation to support something and something is done legally. And when it comes to numbers, I don't know, how many of you totaled up those 20 items on there that are listed at $10,806,591.16? The actual total, when I totaled it, came to $10,624,923.16, a difference of $181,668. Those are the kind of things that drive those of us who have kind of a auditor, controller, pocket protector mentality crazy. And probably is indicative of some of the lack of accuracy in numbers that may be in these other items. So if you have a document there which you could read into the record, or else that would be, I guess, included as part of the staff report later. And so I'm always curious how these things are working. It says a few things regarding this in the staff report, rightly due to accordance with government code. Are all those things being followed? There seems to be a lack of understanding what some of these government codes are allegedly and how they apply. Because conveys the representation for management that all material transactions have been correctly accounted for. Unless the auditor has proof of that, they cannot post these things. The closed fiscal year is expected to reflect the best efforts to capture transactions. And then, of course, as most of us have acknowledged, some of these transactions, if they're not complete, had to be closed. And that was your request, everybody's request. And hopefully that both people will work together. I mentioned earlier, maybe there needs to be a liaison with the expertise to make sure numbers total, for starters, when you're trying to add up a column of 20 numbers, that they're correct. And I wish everybody the best of luck in continuing. It's unfortunate that some people point fingers at other people, and I'm not saying who's doing this, but when people get irate and call up and find out that something they submitted in October to one department is not paid, and then they find out that that hadn't been submitted until 2.5 or 3 months later, then that's not a good thing. So thank you, my opportunity to speak.
All right, you're welcome. And Thomas, you're next. Welcome.
Okay, I'm here now. Yeah, I guess you guys are unmuting us because I get, when you say, am I there? I hit *6 and then it muted me and then I had to do that again. But Thomas Mulder here. Long story short, from an outsider looking in, as a taxpayer, I'm really getting sick of the auditor controller. Basically, I feel like there's, I don't want to use the wrong word and held liable, but there is definitely some dysfunction with the auditor controller posting things at the CAO's request as documents are provided. This is me, just the outsider looking in, what I'm seeing, kind of really getting sick of it because I'm seeing the potential for the county to lose out on a lot of dollars. I know this is an elected position. I know months ago in November, there was staff added and saying we're going to bury the hatchet and work towards positive behavior. But then I read this staff report last night. I was like, oh my gosh, what the heck? And another added to that, I was in paying my property taxes yesterday, and my son pointed out how weird it is to have, an office that's paid by taxpayers blocked off for view for people to look in. The public should be able to look in there and see if people are working or actually doing things, or are they on their phones, scrolling social media, doing whatever. The public has a right to walk by there and see in. I understand if COVID, you're worried about certain things, people going in and out. Tax collector, you knock on the door, they buzz you through when the appropriate amount of people are there. But it's just an added icing to the cake. I'm just getting sick of it. And this needs to get worked out. Like, I thought this was worked out in November when staff was added and everyone said we're going to work towards positiveness. This is not positiveness. And this is getting to the point where it's ridiculous. And we as a community need to do something about this because this is costing taxpayer dollars. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
All right, thank you, Thomas. I am not seeing any hands up. So we're going to go back to the board on this for conversation. And anyone want to start? Oh, Supervisor Bushnell.
Thank you. Ms. Hayes, can you clarify the items that we're taking care of again, please?
Yes, the 1.4 million for the CARES Act sick leave transfer was processed. The 757,000 for the Prop 172 accruals was processed, and the 217,000 for the DHH admin charges was processed.
Okay, thank you. And then we're also still waiting for a 2019 audit findings and review. Or no?
Correct. Yes, the 2019-20 audit will not be conducted until the books have been closed and our external auditing firm is contacted to begin that work.
CAO Nielsen.
Well, point of clarification, the 2019 audit has been completed. It's the 2020 audit that will need to be completed once the books are closed, and the 2019 audit has not come to your board yet.
Thank you. That was what I was asking. So I'm wondering, there seems to be a he said, she said thing going on, and I'm wondering, is it appropriate that, I think in some discussions with MGO, we've had some suggestions that we do an audit committee or have a committee formed with, certain sets of amounts of people so that we can have a just more than just the CAOs and just more than the auditor controllers' opinions. Is that true?
That is true, correct. An audit committee could be formulated by your board. And that group would come together on a regular basis to evaluate the processes and receive updates on transactions that are moving forward or not moving forward.
What would an audit committee look like?
Go ahead, CAO Nelson.
Through the chair, so your board could adopt a resolution or a charter establishing an audit committee, and normally on an audit committee, it would be comprised of the county administrative officer, auditor controller, the treasurer tax collector, possibly the assessor, and then possibly also a board member. So the composition is really up to you, but it would also include qualified members of the public that have some knowledge of government accounting as well.
Thank you for that clarification. That's all I have for right now.
Supervisor Wilson. Oh,
I didn't have my hand raised.
You're square lit up. I don't know why. Well, I'm going to ask a question. I'm not sure if CAO Nielsen or Felicia can answer this. I've had a few people refer to the health insurance error correction, and it's substantial size, but can you really explain what that is? I mean, I think people have this idea of one thing, and I suspect that this explanation is probably more, I think it'd be nice to know. How's that?
Sure. There was one particular employee who had a significant health insurance expense associated to a payroll that occurred in December, and that expense was transferred from Health and Human Services to risk management for that expense. As far as I understand, and Director Lee is on the line, she might be able to speak to this in detail. It was a system error that caused that calculation to be incredibly overstated. And those transfers are all conducted manually automatically, within our system.
Okay, thank you. Director Lee, did you want to add some to that?
Yes. Good morning, Madam Chair, honorable board members, CAO Nielsen, and County Council Billingsley. Thank you for the privilege before you to answer this specific item. It was brought to my attention during our year-end conversations with the auditor controllers in October, in reviewing some of our prior transactions so that we can properly close our year-end. Staff pointed out to the auditor controllers, and with her guidance, we submitted the certain journals and we brought it to the auditor controllers' attention. So briefly, it was a glitch in a one solution system that occurred in December of 2019 pay cycle that accidentally charged us $3.4 million in the health insurance component charged to the Department of Health and Human Services to one particular employee. And for whatever that system is, the actual cost that should be charged to that employee is $477. And because of this error, and we're trying to work through our systems and try to put in a ticket to resolve this through IT. And it was a very complex situation that ultimately we opened a ticket with IT. We reached out to One Solution to see how we can fix this. And it was discovered that we are unable to correct this in the system. So there is still a pending ticket in the IT component to have it resolved. So ultimately, in that conversations with the auditor controllers, we share with her the discrepancies, and the auditor controllers, was very open to say, wow, I wish that we had made that discovery sooner. We wanted to look at this because we've closed out the quarters, but let's take a look of how we can best move forward to resolve this because it is driven by a system. So we submitted a journal entry to reverse the corrections, and that's kind of where we're at. And it is my understanding that the auditor controllers, basically acknowledged that this will be part of the fund rollover, and there's no revenue or expense, but at the end of the day, it has a substantial factor because it resolved in my side of the budget, and it has a negative side on the HSS, whereby we could not completely process our transactions. And so just kind of gave you that perspective, but I wanted to make sure that our DHHS director, Connie Beck, and her deputy finance director, Mr. Travis Green, can also speak to you of that kind of a coordinations because it happens in the system, but it impacted the two of us. So we just need now to reverse and it depending on the system. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, the background to that $3.4 million health and insurance error. Thank you.
Did Director Beck want to add anything?
I can just tell you that it's affecting our fund balance in DHHS. And so if we could get that correction made as soon as possible, that would be wonderful. And prior to closing 1920 would be better for us. And I do think you understand now that this was a systems issue. This wasn't something that was done. So if we could have this fixed soon, that would be really great.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Bushnell?
Thank you. I'm new to this, and so I have to ask a lot of questions and search around for a lot of information. And one thing is clear that there's a lot of different opinions. In my discussion with MGO, an audit committee was suggested, and I think this is a good way for the organization to be responsible for corrective action plans for audit findings and addressing financial issues such as the ones discussed today and previously proactively. I would like to make a motion, if I may, to direct the county administration office to return with recommendations on establishing an audit committee. And I also would like to add to that motion to have the auditor controller to return to the board to review the 2019 audit and findings with external auditor as soon as possible, so that we can come to good solutions and resolutions for moving all of this forward and working together.
A motion has been made, and
I'll
a
second
video.
the motion.
Second it for, oh, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify because I might have missed it when Supervisor Bushnell was saying it. I get the audit committee part, and I think that's a great idea, and that is a good positive move forward. Did you also include direction of or authorization of the outstanding debts being paid?
I did not. What the second part of the motion is to suggest heavily to the auditor controller to return to the board as soon as possible to review the 2019 audit and findings with external auditor as soon as possible.
Okay, yeah, Supervisor Wilson. Oh, actually, CIO Nielsen, I'm gonna go to her and then I'll come back to you, Supervisor Wilson.
I was just wondering if maybe it was possible to include the other staff recommendation to authorize the auditor or controller to post the outstanding financial transactions.
So I will amend my motion to include that.
That's what I was asking, but I didn't apparently
Thank
ask
you.
it right, which happens at times. Supervisor Wilson?
Yeah, that's what I was hoping to get in here as well. So.
All right.
Ryan, do you want me to review that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you'd like. Thank you.
Okay, so my motion is to for staff recommendation of completing transactions, outstanding transactions, and to direct the county administrative office to return with recommendations on establishing an audit committee as soon as possible, and to direct the auditor or suggest heavily the auditor controller to return to the board to review the 2019 audit and findings with external auditor as soon as possible.
Did you get that, Ryan?
Sorry. Yes, I got that. We're adding recommendation number 2 to the motion that was originally made, correct?
Okay. Any comments that supervisors would like to share, or do we just go and vote? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. Yeah, Supervisor Wilson.
This is just a question for CAO Nelson. Does the I understand what I think I understand what Supervisor Bushnell is suggesting. I'm just wondering, do you feel that you were present, I believe, in the conversation with MGO that she's referring to. So does this sound like a direction you think is reasonable?
Through the chair, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I don't see any other hands, so we'll go to Ryan for a roll call vote.
Thank you, Chair. Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bohn?
Yes.
And Supervisor Bass?
Yes.
Thank you. Passes 5-0.
Okay, so I do want to run this by, yes, Supervisor Wilson?
I see Alicia keeps putting her
I'm
finger up.
sorry. I just,
I don't know what that means.
Thank you, Supervisor Wilson. I just wanted to add one parting comment in response to Kent Sawatsky's public comment. He is absolutely correct. Those numbers in the worksheet total up to 10.6 million. My worksheet had hidden cells that were grabbing those. So I am happy when I make mistakes to acknowledge those. And thank you, Kent, for calling me on that. That was 100% my fault.
Okay.
Good thing we have him.
All right. So a question for the rest of you is, we have 2 public hearings coming up, and then we have a 1:30 time set. Is there interest in trying to take a half-hour lunch now and coming back at 12:30? Because I don't want to see us get to the point where we miss lunch completely again. Okay, I'm fine. I'd like a lunch. I know Supervisor Wilson does as well. And Supervisor Bohn would rather speed through. Supervisor Bushnell?
We've only been doing this 3 hours.
I'm good to continue.
I would like at least 15 minutes that would be great. So I can.
Because we just have those 2 items to do, and then we have, we do have the 1:30 time set.
Okay. Well, how long what do we think that's going to take in terms of the closed session?
Oh, I don't know. Justin, Jefferson, yeah. Forgot his name today. Sorry. Jefferson.
Lee might want to weigh in, but I think at least the time set is at least half an hour.
Yes, it is about half an hour for closed session at 1:30 time certain.
And then we have more closed sessions after that. So I still think a 15-minute break is reasonable. So I suggest that we come back at 12:15.
Thank you. It's also good for staff to take a break too. So.
I'm in agreement with that. We're missing 2, but I think we can, we can move forward here. So we are now getting into the public hearing section of our meeting. And the first one comes to us from the CAO's office, and it's a public hearing to consider adoption of an ordinance for the 2021 update of the Humboldt County Schedule of Fees and Charges. It does need a 4/5 vote. And is this one that you have to introduce, Jefferson, because I don't see any numbers behind it?
Yes, Chair, I looked at it, and it's actually a paraphrase of the full title, so I will read the whole title when the hearing is open.
Okay. So at this point, I'd like to open the public hearing. And Jefferson, did you say you had anything to add, or I can just move straight over to the CAO's office?
No, Chair, I'm actually going to read the full title.
Okay, thank you.
Before your board today is adoption of an ordinance amending and updating the Humboldt County Schedule of Fees and Charges for permits and services of the various Humboldt County departments.
All right, thank you. I do notice the next public hearing has the numbers written, so hopefully I'll get that straight. All right, so we've now opened the public hearing, and I'd like to turn this over to our CAO team to run us through this.
Thank you, Chair Bass. As you already stated, this is the update to our schedule of fees and charges, and I will turn this over to our Senior Administrative Analyst, Neftali Rubio Mills, to provide the staff report.
Morning, Chair Bass, members of the board. Let me just share my screen with you. So we are all set.
Can you speak a little louder? I don't know if anyone else is having a hard time. I was having a hard time hearing you.
Yes, let me know if
that sounds better for me anyway.
Get those windmills off of there.
Does that sound, is the sound a little better? Sorry, my docking station.
I think so.
Let me go back. Okay, let's try that again. Can you hear me better now?
I think so. Anyone else have an issue with it? No? Okay, I think we're fine.
Okay, great. So I'll start again. So good afternoon, Chair Bass and members of the board. My name is Neftali Rubio Mills. I am the Senior Administrative Analyst with the County Administrative Office. I come before your board today to present the proposed 2021 schedule of fees and charges. The Board of Supervisors has authorization through California State Government Code and other specific legislation to amend fees and charges in order to recover the cost of providing a product or service. The schedule of fees and charges is brought to your board annually, and we are bringing this year's proposed schedule a little later than usual due to constraints posed by COVID-19. If the proposed schedule is approved today, the majority will be effective on March 29th of this year, and due to longer public noticing requirements, planning and building will be effective on April 26th. To get us started, I just wanted to share this chart that illustrates the overall shifts in the proposed fee schedule this year. Fees that did not change, those that went up or down, old fees that were deleted, and new additions to the schedule. It depicts the number and percentage of each type of fee, and as you can see, the majority or 80% of the fees this year did not change. And this is represented by the dark blue section. The green section represents 10% of the fees that have increased, and the light blue section represents the fees that have been reduced. The reddish brown section of the chart shows that 5% of fees are new this year, while the dark brown section shows that 2% of fees have been deleted. This chart shows a comparison of this year's proposed fees compared to those that were approved in the 3 previous cycles. As in years past, the majority of fees this year did not change. And again, this is represented by the dark blue section of the graph. 80% of fees remain unchanged this year compared to 81% in the previous 2 years and 70% in 2017-2018. The reddish brown sections represent new fees. 5% of the proposed fees are new this year, similar to last year, and 3% the year before that. And looking back at the green sections, only 10% of this year's proposed fees have gone up compared to 12% of fees last year and 15% the previous year. The light blue sections at the top of the graph represent 3% of fees that have decreased compared to 2% last year and 1% in the year before that. And in order to add or change fees, departments are required to provide calculations for current costs as well as justifications that allow the county to collect the fees. Information reflecting these changes are included in your packets and attachment 2. And in general, the primary cause of fee changes are shifts in overhead costs, such as salaries and the consumer price index. Out of the 168 total proposed changes this year, 73% have increased 10% or less. And as you can see, 7 departments added a total of 59 new fees. However, just 2 departments make up the bulk of these additions, and that's the Sheriff's Office and Aviation. Some examples within aviation, they have tied fees to the facilities available at each airport, replacing a one-size-fits-all structure that was previously in place. And this was driven in part by a departmental rate study that was aimed at aligning fees with their market values. The Sheriff's Office has restructured alarm fees. They now reflect a tiered approach that intends to de-incentivize the overuse of emergency response personnel during false alarms. And those fee rates have also been adjusted based on an internal rate study done in the local area. One area I did want to make a point of clarification on is the Board of Supervisors fee for the Assessment Appeals Board, or AAB, findings of fact. These fees are established through the Revenue and Taxation Code, section 16115, and they allow for a reasonable fee to be imposed by the county to cover expenses related to AAB findings and conclusions. And these were approved by your board in August of 2018 in file number 18, 1071, and item C10. And I can provide that as a follow-up for you if you are interested. And I apologize, the fees were not included prior to this year's proposed fee schedule as they were approved in 2018. However, we are addressing that oversight today pending your approval. Of the 18 departments on the proposed fee schedule, 13 have changed at least one fee. This year we had more departments than usual with no changes to their fees, and this is mainly due to staffing limitations and a desire to maintain current service structures during the COVID-19 pandemic. Those departments include the auditor controller, treasurer tax collector, planning and building, the district attorney, and the UC cooperative extension. Only 3% of all fees have decreased, but examples of fees that show a significant reduction can again be found within the Sheriff's Office and aviation. Those include the fees that aviation has reduced by up to 22% at Garberville and Ronerville airports, as well as Murrayfield for airplane hangars and tie downs. The Sheriff's Office has reduced a fee for a 30-day late payment penalty for alarm violations by 90%. And that now reflects actual staff time, as well as adding a $5 stepped increase for each subsequent late period. As I noted previously, just 10% of fees have increased. And while nearly 3/4 of those changed by less than 10%, 2 examples show increases above that level. And those are expungement fees that are charged by public defender and conflict counsel. Those were increased 50%. That fee was adjusted to reflect a portion of the current productive hourly rate rather than a flat fee that was applied in previous years. The correctional facility has also increased the daily fees for the inmate outside work crews, which were previously known as SWAT teams, by 63% and 47% respectively for their 8 and 10 person crews. The fee now reflects the daily jail rate for the participants, plus the cost of the deputy that's assigned to oversee their work. It also removed an arbitrary 25% overhead fee that was previously included in that rate. So 5 departments have deleted at least 1 fee from this year's proposed fee schedule. Fees can be deleted for many different reasons. Services become obsolete, such as the library's fee for video conferencing equipment, as this technology is no longer in use. Programs are discontinued, or the responsibility for giving service is shifted to another department or agency. Fees can also be consolidated or merged with other fees. For example, elections fees have, for vote history, have been restructured, so you'll see a deletion of certain categories and an addition of others that reflect a narrower tier. In all, 19 fees were deleted from the 2021 schedule, leaving a total of 1,212 fees countywide. And just as a recap, the schedule of fees and charges is brought before you annually. And assuming this year's proposed schedule is approved, the majority will go into effect on March 29th, with planning and building following on April 26th. So with that, I thank you for allowing me to present this to you today and welcome any of your questions or comments.
Thank you, Naftali. Can you stop sharing your screen, please? I still had a hard time hearing a lot of that, so I'm gonna, if anyone want to, I have a question, but if anyone on the board cares to ask a question first, just raise your hand. Okay, I'm going to. Naftali, I know that I've gotten some calls, and I suspect some others might be getting calls or emails about concerns in the general aviation community that we are raising their rates for hangars, but we are not raising the rates that we charge county departments, and that is not correct. If I'm reading other things, but it's not really clear in this huge batch of things. So it'd be great if you or Cody or someone can kind of just talk about that a little bit, because I think there's a lot of wrong impressions out there, and the county is having their own fees. Their fees are going up too for being on aviation property. So, not that I said that very well. Cody, are you here?
I am here. I think Amy had her hand up though.
Through the chair, I was just going to say, I think Director Rogatz would love to answer your questions around fee increases for general aviation property uses.
Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Nelson, and thank you, Chair Bass and Board of Supervisor members for having me here today. In answering your question, Chair Bass, we are working with the CAO office and the budget team and multiple county departments on adjusting their fees, reflecting fair market value. Those fees, we're still working through the process, but there's separate agreements with each one of those departments for the different parcels that they occupy. But yeah, as we move to that fair market value, we're looking at a 243% increase overall of the fees that are currently paid by other county departments.
Okay, and will that be coming to us sometime in the future if it's not, necessarily in this document?
Yes, I've been working with Alicia Hayes in the CAO office and CAO Nielsen and her team to figure out how we incorporate that in the next budget.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's very helpful. Any other supervisors have a question or comment on this item? Supervisor Wilson, did you raise your hand?
I haven't raised my hand, but I do think that, all things considered, I think this is, a robust effort on staff's behalf to update these things. It's annual, so, this is iterative. And yeah, I'm so far supportive of the measure.
All right, Supervisor Bohn.
And Cody, I don't know if that was in depth enough. Can you give me what the plans are on general aviation? Because I happen to be up there every once in a while, and we've got a lot of hangars that they don't have doors because basically the runners have rusted off. So the doors are there, but there's nowhere for them to roll on. I know there's the places, three or four up the ones that do have doors. The person that has them built the doors because the other doors went bad. And I know I'm hearing we have a plan, and the explanation of why, I don't want to go into this to sound like a slumlord, but it just, just saying, there's been a lot of questions how we can raise when the material, with what we're renting is fairly substandard. So and we've talked about this, and you can't argue the point, but what is the plan to facilitate some of those things?
Through the chair, thank you, Supervisor Bohn. And great question. The fee increases for this year is a part of a larger process going back to the 2018 land use inspection that the FAA conducted. This is a piece of solving that very large complex puzzle. But what we're really doing here is trying to get ourselves back in compliance with grant assurances or promises that we've made to the FAA for taking past grants and also trying to become eligible for future grants. So in taking this step, the FAA has slated approximately $1.5 million for our airports for 2021, but we need to take this step first. And in that $1.5 million is a comprehensive system-wide airport study where we would analyze all of our hangars, their conditions, and come up with a business plan to bring back before your board on what hangars we would recommend to repair, which ones we would recommend to replace, and looking at a larger scope project at our different airports and setting the priorities for each airport moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
And Supervisor Bushnell.
That answered my question on the aviation. Thank you.
Okay.
And then,
yes, Supervisor Bohn.
And then I'm trying to find it. There was some non-aviation land rents. Is that covering for solar? Is that what? Did I miss that?
Nope. So the non-aeronautical stuff is related to the other county departments that I mentioned before. We also have a couple of private entities that we'll be working with and negotiating to get them to fair market value. The other piece that you mentioned, the solar project that we're almost ready to kick off. That particular project we had appraised as a part of our land use compliance inspection project with AMCG. And so we negotiated based off of that appraisal, and the FAA has approved what we plan to charge for that space.
Okay.
Supervisor Bushnell.
So the for new people renting a hangar, the new increase would be effective immediately. Is that true of all hangar rents, or people that are existing now, when would their rents go up?
So almost all of the agreements that we're talking about tied to this specific document and these fees and rents are on a month-to-month basis. The facility itself is owned by the county and leased out to the operator. And those are set up on a month-to-month basis. As a part of our AMCG project, we're also planning at a later date to bring a new template for the lease itself before your board that has been, blessed by the FAA and approved by them, and includes all of the clauses and requirements that we have for leases. So we clean that portion of our documentation up as well.
So rates would go up next month? I'm just trying to.
Yeah, sorry. The rates with the schedule that Neftali explained earlier, we would be incorporating those over the next month or two.
Okay. Next month or two?
Yeah, I forget off the top of my head. Sorry, I didn't take notes there, Neftali. Could you refresh what the dates were?
Yeah, the fee schedule will be effective on March 26th, or I'm sorry, March 29th.
Okay.
And Supervisor Bushnell, if I could expand upon that too, the internal rates that we're talking about with other county departments, those would be July 1. And those specific non-aeronautical rates, the FAA has a much higher level of concern about past practices regarding those rates. So that's something that we need to incorporate in short order. We've worked with the FAA regulators because some of these fee increases are fairly significant. A few of them are up to fair market value, but we've not negotiated. We don't negotiate with the FAA, but we've worked with the FAA to try to minimize impacts to the general aviation community and incorporate these increases as slowly as possible, or with the minimal increases that they'll allow.
Thank you. And this may have been answered, and I apologize if so, but how soon could tenants be seeing improvements to their hangars or such?
Yeah, great question. So once we take this step, there's a few other things we need to do, but we'll be bringing grant applications before your board here in the coming weeks. So that system-wide study that I mentioned will be kicking off here in the next few months, so long as we get board approval. And that project, that planning project would incorporate our GA tenants. So we'd be reaching out and seeking public input as we're trying to set those priorities. I would anticipate that we would see the first major work on hangars in 2022, 2023 timeframe, and then we'll probably have a multi-year process moving forward from that.
Do you have any more? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay, then Supervisor Bohn.
Yeah. Director Rogatz, what's our relationship at Neyland and Ronerville and stuff? What's our relationship with CDF? How do we go about it? Are they considered non-aeronautical or?
No, they're considered aeronautical, and we do have an agreement with them for Fortuna, and they're CDF based there. And then at Neyland, they are actually not on airport property. It's considered what's called a through the fence, and we don't have a fence around the entire facility anyway. So that's just the phraseology the FAA uses, but they are allowed to access the airfield, but they're not technically on airport property.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Right. I see Supervisor Bushnell's hand up still, but I do know. Okay, just checking. And I wanted to ask Supervisors Wilson or Madrone if either of them had a question before we go to public comment.
I don't have a question.
Okay.
Oh,
all right.
Is this just or can I ask a question of the sheriff now?
Fine. I mean, it's fine with me. So,
Here.
the sheriff one, there he is.
Sheriff, hey, how you doing?
Good afternoon.
I'm looking at the alarm schedule, and I've always thought as alarms as a tool for you guys. And I noticed that we used to give 3.5, which would be 6 a year. And that means you have to call out. And I know some of the alarm companies will make, I don't know if we make them required, they'll make 2 calls before they call you, before they turn in. They'll make 2 calls, they'll go to 2 phone numbers. I know the alarms I have, it's a 2 alarmer, and that seems to save a lot of your time. But I noticed if we go to 2 for the year, that's basically going to be a $500 hit if somebody, gets tripped 6 times. And I mean, it seems like a pretty good size hit. The other thing is the, is this outsourced? Do we do this ourselves? The monitoring?
We do this. Yeah. So we do the billing. Yeah. We do the billing in-house.
Okay. And then when they apply for a permit, all they have to do is apply, and then they can put it in. They don't have to wait for your approval, right?
So they apply and a written application, and we put it in our system.
Okay.
Yeah. And so in regards to the preference on alarms, it's all up to the customer preference and the alarm company of when we get the call. And again, this is the reason why these fees are added is actually these fees were in our ordinance 916. And so all these fees were in place. They just were never a part of our fee schedule. And so I think back in 1991, these were put into place. And so what we're doing now is just realizing on the fee schedule, these fees are what the county charges. So those are the things that were actually added because of the ordinance.
And Supervisor Bushnell? I can't read your lips.
Why not? My
Nice
question
trying.
is for Sheriff Hansel also. So we haven't been enforcing that ordinance since 1991.
No, we haven't. No, we haven't been enforcing that ordinance. We've been collecting bills, we and also respond and then log false alarms and then send bills to people that are chronic, have chronic alarms that are consistently going off and we can charge. So what we're doing here is we're changing these or proposing these changes as far as the response widely because we have like 95% of our alarm calls are false alarms. And as you all know, we have a very large county with very few resources. So we want people to take it very seriously if they do have an alarm to make sure that it's, when it goes off, it is something that is necessary for law enforcement to respond because it does deploy resources. And just so everyone knows, there's nothing under the law that mandates that the sheriff's office or any law enforcement agency goes to a burglar alarm. Okay, it's all based on calls for service. It's all based upon the priorities for calls. We do go to them, when we do have law enforcement available. So, but this again gives people that added responsibility that if you have an alarm, number one, you're paying an alarm fee every 2 years, and you're responsible for those false alarms that come in. Mind you, if there's 2 false alarms in the year, those are the freebies. The third one in a year, you will get charged.
No disrespect, but I'm going to ask you some questions. So
No problem.
I have an alarm through my business, and I get a call if my alarm goes off in the middle of the night. When my alarm company calls me, I ask what area my alarm has been triggered. Obviously, if it's in the middle of my store, I don't request assistance from the sheriff. If my alarm has been triggered at my windows or doors, and I live an hour and a half away, then I request that the sheriff come because I now have asked the questions. I'm assuming, without knowing that, something's going on. I understand that it costs, it's hard for you guys, but I live 2 blocks from the substation or my store is. So I'm wondering, it rubs me a little bit wrong as a business owner that I would get charged when I've taken I've taken the precautions to not send you guys, and then, and my alarm doesn't go off excessively. So can you just kind of explain, because it does. And also I have at times requested and not had anybody respond. And I get you saying that you don't have to, if you're not available, but it just is a little bit touchy.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand that. And it is one of those things that, it's a service that we do to the community, and it is officer discretion on whether or not sometimes those are billable or not. And so if an officer gets on scene, it's a windy night, those kind of things that are sometimes shake the door, shake the windows, trigger the alarms. We don't say that that's going to be a billable alarm. And that doesn't count against your potential, third alarm. So there's a lot of officer deputy discretion that does go into these, and we log into that. So that is good. And when we do have people available, obviously we want to stop crime. We want to be there and get there quickly, like you said. But the fact is that we don't just go to the ones that are 2 blocks away. We go to the ones that are 60 miles away from the substation. And those are the ones that, again, when we send 2 deputies out 60 miles from the substation, it takes it away from an area where they could, make an impact, or there might be a crime that's in progress. So those are the kind of false alarms, that 3, 4 in a year, there has to be some kind of a consequence, so we can make sure that people do fix those things that are chronically going on.
The key word for me was officer discretion that I didn't hear earlier, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Wilson or Madrone? I don't know if I asked you already. Do you have any questions, Supervisor Madrone?
Yeah, first I wanted to thank Cody for all the work he's been doing with his staff to get all these FAA items up to snuff so we can move forward. A lot of hard work there, and very much appreciated. A lot of the economic development around McKinneyville is tied to, completing this so that we can get the airport business park going and a lot of other things. So thank you, Director Rogatz, for your efforts there. And then Sheriff Hansel, thank you very much for your discussion on the alarm systems. I actually was working with the sheriff a year or so ago on a slightly different element of alarms, where an individual has an alarm, but you can't hear it outside the house. It's just simply for them inside the house to know there's an intruder or something else going on. And so the alarm literally just triggers inside the house. The neighbors can't hear it. And there's actually a waiver in the ordinance, in the code, that allows people to have such a system without paying the fee. And so that was nice to discover that there's already something actually in the ordinance that allows for an individual that might want that kind of protection. Obviously, if you're a business like Supervisor Bushnell or many, many others, or even houses that really want to, have an alarm go off, maybe they leave home and they're on vacation and they want somehow to be some alert happening. So that's where you get the audible alarm systems happening, along with a security button that goes off with the company that you're working with. We had one of those in our neighborhood, and every time the wind blew, man, that thing, it went off 20, 30 times a year, and it was just ridiculous. So I very much appreciate what you're doing, Sheriff Hansel, in trying to say, we want to help. We want to be responsive to these things, but it really is a personal responsibility on the part of the homeowner or the business to try and install it in a way that it has as few of false alarms as possible. And that is, just basic, logistics of where you place these things. Are they on a stable structure, or are they on something where just the slightest movement is going to trigger things? So I think personal responsibilities for these is a really good thing. I understand it can be a large burden, but if your alarm's going off for real reasons on a regular basis and you have to pay these fees, well, then it was money well spent, because you've got people trying to rob you or break into your home and stuff. So that's what it's about, is trying to provide that protection. But, it's putting the responsibility on the individual to do that rather than on the community per se. So I'm supportive of all of that. Thank you for your efforts.
All right. And Supervisor Wilson, anything to add before we go to public comment? Nope. All right. So we're going to go to the public comment portion of this item. And we have one hand up, 7454. you're on.
So I check this out every year. I look for anomalies. One anomaly was, I guess, as you mentioned before, I could not hear a majority of the report on these items, so I may be incorrect on something. But the original basis on this was the 2019 fee schedule. Now we're at 221. So we skipped the year. This is earlier than some. So I look for anomalies. On the first page here, one kind of a cost of a blank DVD, if not supplied, used to be $1.50, and that's going up by 233.33%. So that's one of the anomalies there, up to $5. I did, and of course, that's of course no consequence as far as I'm concerned, but I did have, with the testimony coming from the dais there, and the condition of your rentals at the airport facilities, I mean, if it was a residential thing and you were raising someone's rent and yet it was a substandard building where someone was doing all their own maintenance on it, that would be a hard one to swallow and a hard one to justify if somebody didn't want to pay that increase. And of course, you're not apples and apples. It didn't sound like it would be possibly years. Maybe I misunderstood again before the actual fixing of these facilities would be accomplished. And it seems quite unfair that the private sector rates are being raised prior to the final assessment of what the public's sector would be. In other words, the county's responsibility. This is isn't this a $50 million lawsuit that was involved in here potentially? Well, I think that's the one that was triggering all this with the FFA and froze your funding and possibly jeopardize your prior. But it just doesn't make sense. You know, there's a lot of, I've heard pushback and angst from people in your community here, the people who like to fly the small planes and use the hangars and things, quite disappointed in the lack of maintenance. And it just kind of seems like you're rubbing some salt in a wound and poking someone with a stick that shouldn't be poked possibly, and should take care of those improvements and make sure that their increases are aligned with when the county's paying theirs. That's just, I think, common sense, but that's just my input on those increases in that particular one. Regarding the alarms, if someone's house was being robbed repeatedly, I don't think those are false alarms. So I guess if you actually found something, the door was broken into or an intrusion, that would not be something someone would be billed for, I would hope. So thank you for my opportunity to speak on your increases in your fees and schedules. Thank you for the one angst I always have had is the extremely high cost to appeal something to the Board of Supes, $2,500 or $1,500. I've heard all kinds of different numbers. Coastal Commission doesn't charge for that. I know it might burden you and staff a little bit more, but I think I would agree with the Coastal Commission's position regarding appealing actions taken, especially by the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I do not see any other hands raised. So with that, I'm going to close the public comment portion of this hearing and return to the board. Yes, Supervisor Wilson.
I'd like to make the motion to approve staff recommendations.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. I actually, we keep getting this comment about a lawsuit or what's causing what. And I did ask Supervisor, sorry, I almost called you Supervisor Wilson. I'm not sure if that's a promotion. If CIO Wilson, I'm having a hard time today, Nilsen and Cody might be able to kind of address that, because I think there's a lot of misinformation and it just seems to be, it keeps happening. And so if we could finally kind of get it out on this is really what's going on, it would be, I think, helpful.
Absolutely, Supervisor Bass. The county is not currently in any kind of lawsuit or consent decree with the FAA. There is an outstanding lawsuit with a Jane Doe, and currently they are not pursuing further action because of Director Rogatz's actions to partake in the FAA land use study, and he through today's actions is increasing those aviation rents. And so there is progress in terms of what John and Jane Doe were looking for in that lawsuit. So I hope that provides the clarification that you're looking for.
Yeah, I think it, keeps being phrased in multiple places as, that the FAA brought a lawsuit against the county, and that is not accurate. And so hopefully one of these days that will stop circulating. So any other supervisors have a comment? Supervisor Bohn? No?
No, I mean, ham sandwich can sue us, I think, is the deal here. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, but even the ham sandwich,
every week, and then you can talk about
you know what the right one is. So, okay, I don't see any other questions. So, Ryan, will you do the roll call vote?
Thank you, Chair. Supervisor Madrone?
There he is.
Yes, sorry.
No problem. Thank you. Supervisor Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes.
Supervisor Bohn?
10-4.
And Supervisor Bass?
Yes.
Thank you. Passes 5-0.
All right, so we're going to close that public hearing. And we're going to move on to the next one. Where to put it? Well, this one is in regards to, the cannabis dispensary ordinance. And, my paper fell and drifted away. So I'm going to ask Jefferson if you can still introduce it because it's not sitting right in front of me at this moment.
Thank you, Chair. Before your board is the potential adoption of two ordinances. The first one is an ordinance amending sections 313-55.3.11 of the Cannabis Dispensaries Ordinance in Chapter 3 Zoning Regulations, Title 3 of Humboldt County Code, with updated hours and implementation of Resolution number 19-83 regarding cannabis use during pregnancy and breastfeeding. The second is an ordinance amending section 314-55-3-11 of the Commercial Cannabis Land Use Ordinance for Medical Dispensaries in Chapter 4, Zoning Regulations, Title 3 of Humboldt County Code, with updated hours and implementation of Resolution number 19-83 regarding cannabis use during pregnancy and breastfeeding.
Wow, thank you. I found it. I drifted away, but I've got it back, and I'm glad you got to say all that. So at this point, if I hadn't opened the public hearing, I am opening it now. And I would like to go to Director Ford for a staff report.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Bass and members of the Board of Supervisors. John Ford with the Planning and Building Department. Joining me is Lana Adler and Michael Richardson to present the modifications to the provisions of the zoning ordinance regulating dispensaries. This is actually a fairly simple item. It has been without controversy to this point. The changes are, number one, to change the hours of operation that are allowed by ordinance for dispensaries, and to require that the information be provided and posted to employees and customers related to the danger of cannabis use during pregnancy while breastfeeding. So currently the hours of operation in the existing county ordinances allow the dispensaries to be open from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily. State law allows dispensaries to be open between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. This change for both the inland and the coastal ordinances would make the county ordinance consistent with state law. We can give a much more detailed presentation than that if you're interested, or we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Ford. Does anyone have any specific questions for Director Ford? I don't see any at this time. So we'll open this up to public comment. And at this moment, there are no hands up. So we'll wait just there we go. We have first speaker has the last four digits of 2912. Welcome. Just press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Welcome.
Great. Hello, supervisors. My name is Russ Gordon. I'm policy director with Humboldt County Growers Alliance. We're a trade association that represents more than 250 legal Humboldt County cannabis businesses including a number of dispensaries. Those dispensaries, which are based all around the county, have requested this ordinance in order to provide increased flexibility, especially during the summer when there are longer daylight hours, to be able to have longer hours of operation. Right now, state regulations allow dispensaries to remain open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., and this ordinance would make our local ordinance consistent with those state rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. Ryan, do you see any other hands up? I do not see any other hands up at this moment. Okay, we just had 3053 popped up. Welcome, Thomas.
Hello, I guess when you guys are clicking on me, it unmutes me naturally now instead of me placing *6. Full disclosure, I think this may increase my revenue if this happened, if they're able to, as well as people I know, if you do open this. So full disclosure on that, but I do support this ordinance because I think it, especially once we get through and actually have tourism and maybe the, downtown Eureka and other areas that have foot traffic and enjoy the community and be out there being able to purchase. But I support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. And I do not see any other hands up. So with that, I'm going to close the public hearing portion of this item and go back to the board for action. So would anyone, yes, Supervisor Bushnell?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion that we adopt staff recommendation, and probably needs to be better than that. Director Ford, can you clarify?
Actually, I think that the staff recommendation is really clear. So if you're adopting that, you've covered all the bases.
Thank you. That would be my motion.
Was there a second?
Second.
Okay. And does anyone care to make a comment on it before you vote? All right. Ryan, can you do a roll call vote?
Thank you, Chair. Supervisor Bohn?
Tim Ford.
Supervisor Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes.
And Supervisor Bass?
Yes.
Thank you. Passes 5-0.
All right, thank you. So we're now moving on to the closed session items. We have 4, if I'm correct. And I guess I'd like to ask County Council, one, to introduce them and then find out if we want to just go straight in and try to tackle one of them before the time's set. But County Council Billingsley.
So Chair, there's a bit of a logistics issue. 3 of them don't have a time certain, but 1 is set for 1:30.
Right.
So we could not go in on the 1:31, but I could announce the other 3 if you'd like to start with those.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Right. Talk slowly.
1:30, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's start with those 3 and that would work.
Thank you, Chair. It's the intention of the board to meet in closed session on 3 items. The first is existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D1 in the case of Jaros, executor of the estate of John R. Brown versus County of Humboldt, case number 4-18 CV 7383 SBA. The second is anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code section 54956.9 D2 and E3. In one potential case, a notice of intent to bring action under the Resource Conservancy and Recovery Act from Pamela Jaros as the executor of the estate of Bohn. And the third is conference with legal counsel pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D2 and E3 to discuss threatened litigation by Mr. Kent Sawatsky.
All right, thank you. So this time I'll open this up for public comment. Yes, 7454. You're on.
I got it. Yep, just as soon as I could there. So the first 2 ones here, I'm trying to figure out. That's it looks like a executor for estate of John Braun, and it looks like it may go back to the year 18, and I can't tell what it is, but a Resource for Conservation Recovery Act Maybe that was some kind of abatement. Really don't know what that one's about. I do know what the other one's about, and I don't think I've threatened litigation. I've had the privilege of working with a certain member of the board there, and I feel it's been very productive as far as potential solutions to what is perceived to be a rather major problem as far as transparency, and as far as I'm concerned, as far as I think I'm perceived to be, that's one of my biggest things is transparency. And all I'm asking really in this is that you try some other format and try and have a Brady Bunch kind of a setup there. And if you need a little time to try that, I'm hopefully optimistic that maybe this Wednesday or sometime this will be discussed by IT. Other areas are able to do it. There's been comments regarding having people come in and doing improper things during the meeting, but I think that can be mitigated by your webmaster. So I'm not trying to be litigious in any way here, just trying to fix what's perceived by the public to be a lack of transparency. And since this is the new normal, or to be the new normal, it sounds like, hopefully, I think we could get this right. Should be no problem. I have not ever sued the county that I recall, and I would hopefully not be doing. So I'd look forward to negotiating. So if any time you folks wish to discuss this with me in some form, if necessary in a closed session item to get my intent, I'm happy to elaborate on what I've just mentioned to you on this particular topic. So thank you for what you're doing there, and hopefully we will be transparent. People are worried that things are happening during this meeting, such as potentially supervisors tasking other things, and we just want to see what's going on during the meeting openly and transparency, and probably eliminate a few things like maybe texting and things like that has been alleged to have been happening. So thank you for the opportunity to speak on your closed session items.
All right, thank you. And we do have another commenter, 0151. You are on. Welcome.
Hi, this is Dottie Russell from Southern Humboldt again. So I too have some big concerns of things that are going on with county employees, particularly the planning department and what's happening with that. I think it's time to set up an ombudsman in the planning department and possibly in some other departments too, so there can be mediation. Right now,
Oh, just hold on just a moment, Dottie. I just want to ask our county council, because that specific item is not on our agenda. So I don't know if if the general comment is okay. I want to just check with county council.
So, Chair, now's the time for comments on the 3 specific closed session items.
Okay, and I don't think there's a specific closed session unless, Dottie, you know how to tie it to one of these closed sessions.
well, yeah, it sounded to me like there was an issue about cease and desist by Kent that was being discussed. And to me, there's other issues that are coming up in Southern Humboldt that a number of people are asking the county coming up soon to either be in litigation or to mediate, because there are things that are going on.
Dottie, I appreciate that. The conversation on this one was in regards to specific concerns over Brown Act and requirements. So I think, I'm sorry, I don't want to have you stop, but I think I'm going to ask you to not continue on that one. But thank you for calling, and maybe next week you can certainly, your next meeting, call in and voice your concerns during the public comment on non-agenda items. That would be the best place for this.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, and let me see. Oops, hello, lost everything all of a sudden. So Ryan, do you see any more hands that have popped up that I'm just missing?
No, Chair, that will conclude public comment for these 3 closed session items.
All right, so then in that case, we will adjourn to closed session. Do we want a few minute break, or are we going to go straight into it? Does anyone have any preference?
Chair, there's a 1:30 time set, so we'll
right. I do know that. So you want us to just? I'm getting. You don't think we can do one in 15 minutes? Is what you're telling me?
I think the 2 Braun matters can be done in 15 minutes.
Okay. So anyone have wild objections?
Do all 3 in 15.
Okay. Well, I like this. I mean, if we could go in and try to get what we can done and come back at 1:30 to announce the other one. So, is that all right? And if it's not, oh well. So I expect to see the rest of you on the other number shortly.
Yes, Chair, we're good to go. Thank you.
Okay. County Council Billingsley, do we have a report out of closed session?
Yes, thank you, Chair. On items K1, L1, and L3, there's no reportable action. On item L2, the board voted unanimously to approve Porter Scott's retention of Downey Brown to assist in the defense of the estate's RCRA claims, and also authorize the risk manager to execute a retainer agreement or letter of engagement with Downey Brown for representation of the county should the estate of Braun file under RCRA.
All right, well, thank you very much for that. And with that, we will be adjourning today in the memory of Brunson. So we are now adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
You